As we talked about just a few moments ago before we chatted with Nick Carboni, we are on the coverage of this breaking entertainment news. Some sad news for folks who either, know him from reality TV or from the large, litany of music that he has put together and the impact that he's had on music. But heavy metal singer, legendary frontman of Black Sabbath, Ozzy Osbourne, has passed away at the age of 76. And this comes actually just weeks after a farewell show that he did in Birmingham, England. And we shared a snippet of our Larry Sprinkle sitting down and chatting with Sharon Osbourne, Ozzy Osbourne's wife. This was back in 2014, and we were teasing the fact that we were trying to round up Larry and bring him in to get some updated insight on the legacy of Mr. Osbourne. Larry is here joining us in the Live Impact News studio. Larry, we're so glad we could round you up.
I didn't have to go far. I was actually in the building. They probably didn't even realize I was still here back in the cave I'm in most of the time. Yeah, it was quite a shock because I was not even aware of this until, I got the call from Sharif, one of our managers here, that he passed away. Then obviously I read about it. So quite a shock, especially since it wasn't that long ago that he did his final performance, which was his final performance.
Yeah. I mean, this was a show we kind of alluded to that was in England, a reunion with Black Sabbath band members. I believe they played for 40,000 folks. And this did really mark the end of the touring career, following what we saw was a diagnosis back in 2020 of Parkinson's. And then there was a spinal surgery that caused him to put a hiatus on things back in 2023. So we know that he, did not have a great, diagnosis that he was working with, but a shock nonetheless. And we have all sorts of folks who are weighing in right now on, his legacy and what he means to them. And for folks who love music, it's kind of hard to like, a genre of music that maybe doesn't have some sort of tangential impact from Mr. Osbourne.
I had a chance to work with Ozzy back in 1986 on a movie called Trick or Treat, which is a very interesting film because it's a horror movie without blood. It's called High Tech Horror. It was recently released last year and has gotten kind of I hate to say the term cult, but there's a group of people that are fanatics about that film. Gene Simmons from Kiss is also in it. Ozzy plays the part. Not typecasting, he plays the part of an evangelist who hates rock and roll.
Oh, man.
It was such an interesting concept that you take someone who is such an adamant member of the rock and roll community to play the antithesis of what he was on stage. It was a fun time with him because at the time I worked with him, I had a chance to spend probably... We shot on about 3 days that I had a chance to spend with him, quite a number of hours each day. He turned out to be, at that time, 1986, he was kind of in between the areas of life when he seemed to be sober and not sober. That was a completely sober time for him. Down to earth, nice guy, completely honest. I had been in radio so much of my career at that point. Had played his music on the air and knew a lot of interesting things about him. And I remember in a bit of conversation, I said, "Hey, Ozzy, your reputation precedes you." And I said, I remember specifically about one particular concert you did where someone, I think that there was a bat, threw it on stage and he took it and bit its head off. And I said, "We know you did that, and then you kept doing it." And he said, "Larry, I've got to be honest with you. Yes, I did do it one time, but the rest of the times it was just a rubber bat, and no one really knew. They thought it was the real thing every time." I mean, he was open and honest, and I said, "Ozzy, your career has been enhanced by a lot of chemicals." And he goes, "Let me tell you something." He says, "Right now, I'm almost totally sober. Drugs have gone, and I'm still having a little bit of alcohol." That was 1986. So we know during the reality series he did, he had some dependency problems, and then at some point again, he overcame all of that, and then he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease.
I mean, that's incredible to kind of have that insight. And I know you mentioned, the reputation preceding him. Like, a lot of folks know about that bat story. I think that's pretty cool that you actually got to ask him about it directly.
Yeah.
And it is great to hear, the good reviews of actually getting to meet him and work with him.
And spend some time with him.
Yeah.
And I remember, if you ever have a chance, you can find it you can find it, the film Trick or Treat. But in the one particular scenes that we worked in, they had to braid his hair down. And literally, it's about the length mine now. And he looked at it and he goes, and I remember him sitting there in makeup and having the hair braided down. He goes, if my mom sees me right now, she'll want me to come back to England and be a truck driver again. Because I guess at some point in his life, as a teenager, maybe he was a truck driver. But he turned out to be a nice guy. I mean, all this crazy reputation with that little bit of devil in his eyes, and but down to earth. And at that time he said, "I've met this wonderful lady who's straightening me out. Her name is Sharon," who eventually became his wife. I spoke to her, and then was it a couple of years ago? I spoke to his daughter, and it was an interview that I did here at the station, and it was something that I can't remember what she was doing, and I said, "Hey, by the way, tell your father that the guy who worked with him, I knew he didn't know my name."
Happy Hump Day. Thank you for joining us here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Across from me is the talented tech support we could add to her resume, Carlene Bragg.
Hi, everyone. I try really hard. I try to get this, this train on the track.
Carlene does a really good job. She could add tech certification to her resume. She does a great job not only producing the show, co-hosting the show, but also fixing things. I'd like to give you guys a peek behind the curtain. It's just that's what we're here for. This is the purpose of Live Impact News.
For.
We try to be as transparent. We are as transparent as possible.
Right.
Not try. We are transparent as possible. But it is a lovely Wednesday.
Did you take your stroll outside?
I did. It
felt great.
It felt fantastic.
Felt great.
Loved it. A lot of stuff happening today, per usual. I say this every day, but it does. Stuff is happening right now. But we need to get back to this fantastic day because it is gorgeous outside.
Gorge. Take a look at that.
Yes. This is the perfect day if, usually the past few weeks is like you go outside around this time and then like the heat is just, and the mugginess is, But today,
it's not
bad.
Yeah.
Not bad. You could take your dog, Jabarkis. There's actually, I do know a dog named Jabarkis.
Honestly, it's a great name.
Yeah. I met a dog named Draco in Detroit. These are real names. I'm not making up any of these names.
My dog's name is Turkey. But
Turkey? You take a turkey?
I've heard around the neighborhood about a dog named Juicebox. And
Juicebox?
I'm like, honestly, I'm mad I didn't think of that.
A dog named Hallie, my parents' dog, Hallie. So shout out to all the dogs that we know in our lives. I say all this to say it's a great day to go outside and walk your dog.
Becca has dogs. What are your dogs' names?
I do. I have one. His name is Ralph, after Wreck-It Ralph.
I was about to say
Wreck-It Ralph.
Wreck-It Ralph.
He's cute but crazy. He's also a husky, so he's got the big black fur.
A lot of
and
hair.
He hates summer. Summer is his worst season. He's been shedding everywhere, but happy to report that he actually got to go to the dog park yesterday because it was cloudy, and this morning he did get a good walk.
Good.
So that means he will leave me alone for the rest of the day.
Even a day like today, like right now.
Yeah, no, it really is actually probably one of the nicest July days that we have seen. And that is not an exaggeration. It truly is a beautiful morning and a beautiful afternoon is underway. Lots of sunshine out there. No surprise today, definitely the pick of the week. I'd say a Knicks pick for sure. A live view across the area, courtesy of Mr. Sparky, of course. I'm looking at one cloud in the sky right now. Look at that muggy meter. All of us in the smiling range. And this comes after a lot of us had straight-lined faces. But let me tell you what, as we fast forward into Thursday, look at those emojis going back
there's
to
gonna be
the
some frownies.
a lot of frowning faces. So unfortunately, this will be short-lived. But if you do have any outdoor activities planned, make sure to do them today because it is going to be the day to do it. Outside now, most of us are starting to warm up into the middle 80s out there, up to around 86 here in Charlotte, 71 over in Boone, and 85 if you're listening over towards Rock Hill. 24-hour temperature change really not showing much of a difference, as yesterday we did have the cloud cover lingering on for much of the day. So I imagine we'll be right where we were for yesterday as well. Heat index, though, it feels like the actual temperature for the first time in about a month. So typically this time of day is when we start to see those heat index values get well into the middle to upper 90s. So that is the difference that you will be feeling for today. High temperatures with lots of sunshine will be very seasonal for this time of year. In the lower 90s, again with lower humidity, should be a perfect afternoon for any outdoor activity. Service map, well, there is that cold front that passed, bringing us this cooler and dry air. But you know what? We've got some changes on the way as a heat ridge continues to build. But for today, though, no heat advisories that you have to worry about across both North and South Carolina. Again, high temperatures reaching the lower 90s, and we'll stay in the 80s from now all the way through about 2-3 o'clock, entering the lower 90s from around 9 o'clock falling down into middle 80s. So overall should be a nice evening with lows dropping down tomorrow morning in the upper 60s to lower 70s. So it should be a fairly nice start to your Thursday. Weather impacts for today, not as hot. We'll continue to see major heat though return as we approach this weekend. So dew points for today going to be close to 60. That is in that comfortable range, but we'll start to get into the upper 60s to lower 70s as we head throughout the work week. And that is going to be as this ridge of high pressure system really starts to settle across the eastern half of the United States. And this is what's going to bring yet again another round of unseasonably hot temperatures our way. So average high for this time of year is 90. This is what we're forecasting as we head towards the weekend. 96 for your Friday, 99, even close to the triple digits in many spots for your Saturday. Going to hang on to the upper 90s for both Sunday and Monday, which is why we also are weather alert because of those dew points, because of that humidity. It's going to feel a lot hotter than the actual temperature, feeling like 102 as we go into your Friday. I'm feeling like 106 really as we head towards the weekend. So of course heat advisory level is from 105 to 109, so this would be within that zone, and we are expecting heat advisories to be issued across portions of the area. That is dangerous heat. You know the drill. We've been talking about it for a while. In addition, we are also going to introduce rain chances back into the forecast. Today is going to be dry, but by the time we get tomorrow afternoon, a couple of showers and thunderstorms will be possible. I'd say the coverage is only fairly about a 20% chance, very minimal. And as we head into Friday, we'll do it all again, especially from about midday all the way through about midnight. There will be a chance for an isolated shower or storm. Really not going to be very impactful. The bigger story is going to be this heat building. So what your weekend forecast looks like, minimal rain chances, but it is going to be hot. Lots of sunshine in the forecast. So if you are looking ahead to your weekend and you're making plans, maybe indoor plans will be the move as we look at those heat impacts. We are in the extreme zone for both Sunday and into Monday. So this is when we start to see heat-related illnesses start to uptick as well. The better news maybe in this forecast is the average high for this time of year is 90, and on average, this is when we really start to see those high temperatures cool down, at least into the upper 80s as we enter through August. Hey, checking in on the tropics, we do have this area of potential development over the next 2 to 7 days. So this is a low pressure system. The remnants of that will be traveling across Florida, entering into the Gulf, where it does have that potential chance for some tropical cyclone development. Certainly something to watch. Right now, though, big story is the heat. 7-day forecast. Today, fantastic. Absolutely no complaints. No rain chances for today, minimal rain chances for Thursday, Friday, and into the weekend. But the big weather impact will definitely be these toasty temperatures that we can't seem to get rid of. Yesterday, we did barely hit 90 degrees, so that marked our 16th day of consecutive high temperatures, 90 degrees or above. And I can tell you right now, we are going to keep this streak going well into next week.
I feel like today it deserves a.
Yes.
You're doing the Mulcahy.
I have to.
Round of applause.
He did it this morning, so I'm like, in honor of Christopher
Crystal,
McKay.
yes.
I had to do the air
This
horn.
weekend looks a mess, though.
But let's enjoy the right now.
I know we're gonna enjoy the right now. My mother's coming into town on Saturday. I'm just thinking about it, and I want to take her to Whitewater Center because she's never been. I'm like, it's gonna be hot.
I don't know about that,
It's gonna be
Carlene.
hot.
You're gonna have to reschedule that one, Carlene.
It's gonna be
Maybe
so
a
hot.
movie date or
Right.
arcade.
There's some great movies in theaters
there
right
actually
now.
are some good movies. I did
Yeah.
see Superman.
How was
How
it?
was it?
I didn't love it.
Oh,
You're like, how was it? Not great. I just love your response.
The critique was that Superman has gotten a little soft. So
Okay.
in each scene, it felt like he was losing every battle. And that, when I went into the movie, I was
Okay.
like, that is literally what the movie was. But he does have a dog, so that made
Hey.
it better.
is he Super Dog?
Yeah. It is a super dog named Crypto.
Named Crypto
Yeah.
for real? Oh wow,
Because
okay.
what other name would it be?
Yeah,
Now, okay,
honestly.
now I'm skeptical because I'm thinking about the latest Batman movie,
Yes.
where I call him emo Batman.
Robert Pattinson.
the
Yeah,
Robert Pattinson.
it's very like
It was different.
I mean, Batman is introvert. Or Bruce Wayne is introverted, but he's just very
by
much.
nature. He's supposed to be private.
But he's not cool in the latest Batman movie.
Is he not? I haven't seen it.
Like the Batman that we know is very cool,
Yes.
soft.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Vampire Batman was not that at
Emo
all.
Batman?
Emo
I
Batman.
actually enjoyed that.
You
Batman.
did?
I really did. Yeah.
I did not
I
like
feel
that
like
one.
Robert Pattinson did a shift from his normal, what people think
Yeah.
of him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's trying to reinvent himself. I actually liked it.
You didn't. Well, it's not as bad as the Ben Affleck.
No,
Batman.
I think it's bad.
And it's just like, okay, I love the Val Kilmer Batman because it sounds like, although Batman does the, try to disguise his voice, the
Yeah.
deep
Yeah.
tone, I felt like Ben Affleck was doing too much.
It's
I
hard to
agree.
not see Ben Affleck as Ben Affleck.
Right.
At
yeah,
a certain
yeah,
point, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In any movie that he does now, at a certain point, I feel like it's like
agree.
after like Argo, like
Yeah.
anything I see him, I'm like, that's just Ben Affleck.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah. Anyways.
Oh, well, hey, that was
That was your movie time.
hey, that was your movie time, and that's what you should do this weekend, Carlene.
yeah,
with your
I'm gonna have to
mom.
reconsider
Yeah.
the outdoor plans here.
Thank you for the suggestion,
Of
Becca.
course.
Thank
and,
you.
And thank you for the forecast. That is Becca Birdsall. Thank you for stopping in again. Yeah, Carlene, reconsider those plans.
I
'cause
know,
that
but
is-
she's an outdoorsy person.
I
She
know,
loves
but-
bird watching, all that stuff. And here's the thing: she knows it's hot because she's down at
Yeah,
home.
and it's
so
hotter there.
It's hotter in Charleston than it is here. So she knows.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mom. We're at the brainstorm here.
For turkey's sake.
For turkey's sake, yeah, that too.
All right, okay, let's shift gears. We want to go now to Texas. This is
Mm-hmm.
a live look from the capital there, Austin. So the Texas Senate and House committees on disaster preparedness and flooding are meeting right now inside the Capitol building. This is what you're looking at. So just to add some context, a layer of context, the U.S. House met about FEMA disaster this morning, primarily focused on the flooding that happened in Texas a few weeks ago, and things got heated.
Heated.
It was tense.
Yeah.
This has been one of the, ever since I feel like the flood happened in those days after and weeks after, things have been tense regarding
Yes.
FEMA. Notifications there in that area, in the Hill Country area, when it comes to safety. So let's listen in to what, again, this is the Texas Senate and House committees on disaster preparedness and flooding. Let's take a listen in to what's being said right now.
Chief Kidd said something earlier. You said when Representative Johnson was asking you about what you needed, you said facilities, so if you had enough facilities, you could be 3 hours from every Texan, I think is the quote I heard you say. Have you thought about partnering with either school districts or TxDOT? Both of them operate and maintain vehicles. Both of them have facilities or property in most communities. At that point, maybe, and I know our school districts have a history of, during the school year, during ice storms and other such, to get up and they look at the roads to see whether or not the school district's going to have school or not, and it's safe enough for people to get to school. So that's just one thought as you move forward, because I think it'd be important for you to have it. And I think as I read, and I'm not sure, have you had access to the calls that came into the emergency operators? There's a list of calls that came in that were recorded by an IT director from Kerrville. Have you seen them?
I have not listened to those, no, sir.
Okay, well, there's a transcript, and I'm going to make it available to you.
Thank you.
Because one of them that concerns me here, at 5:32 a.m., another rescue team arrives in Kerr County and asks, who's in command? The dispatcher team says they don't have an incident command. Can you advise who's running command? The team asks, sir, we don't have an incident command right now, the dispatch responded. The rescue team continued to alert other responders to their presence. So, without an incident command, obviously, how do you coordinate the efforts?
And so, great question, and I don't dispute any of the transcript. I can tell you that the way the incident command system works is sometimes jurisdictional. Mm-hmm. If you were in the city of Kerrville,
right,
then Kerrville local authorities would have established command. Mm-hmm. But so Senator, if you could think of those as if there's a traffic wreck at an intersection,
sure,
one traffic wreck, 2 cars at an intersection. The first arriving disciplines that show up on that scene by the National Incident Management System and Incident Command System, whether it's police, fire, EMS, the most senior person on that first arriving apparatus should establish command for that incident. Everyone else coming into that incident should either go to the incident if ordered or stage if not needed at that point in time. I'll tell you, every traffic accident changes commands about 3 or 4 times. From firefighters trying to gain access to somebody that's trapped, to the medical providers that are trying to provide care, to the law enforcement that's trying to do the investigation, to the public works people that are trying to repair the street sign or the lights damaged, to the tow truck driver who's going to haul it all away. Those are changes of command. 1 intersection, 2 vehicles.
Correct.
But when you have an entire area, you could have multiple command posts.
Correct.
What an emergency operations center is supposed to do is support those multiple command posts. And I can tell you, in a dynamic situation like this, where a massive amount of calls are coming in at one point in time, every individual apparatus that went to every individual rescue would have been establishing their own command, and that may not have been transmitted back to the people answering the 911 call or the radio system. Doesn't mean they didn't do it. It just happened so fast in a period of time like that that it takes a little bit of time to get those systems organized.
So this would be an example of a reason why we have to have people who are trained, well-trained,
Completely.
to understand what to do in a situation like this.
Yes, sir.
What is a code red? A firefighter asked dispatcher to send out a code red alert.
Yep. Also another great technical question. Code red is a trade name of a reverse notification system. So across the nation, we talked about WIA, the Wireless Emergency Alert System, and IPALS, the Integrated Public Alert Warning System. Those are federal programs. FEMA usually supports and runs those, activated by a lot of different people. But each county in Texas also has access to a local reverse notification system. You may know them as Reverse 911, as Code Red, as iInfo, as Everbridge. There's a dozen or so different name brands. Code Red is one of those name brands.
The reason I ask is there was a question, is there any way we could send out a code red to our Hunt residents asking them to find higher ground or stay home? We have to get that approved with our supervisor, the dispatcher response. But the supervisor, it says here, they couldn't be immediately available on the phone. Just another example of why we need to get this professionalized.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members, that's all the members of the panels up here. Chairman King and I'm going to try to run through some of this. You want to go first, Chairman King? Feel free. Chief, it's good to see you. I wish it was a different circumstance. I'm gonna try to run through these. A lot of this stuff's been trying to address, but I'm gonna try to bring a little bit of perspective. I do agree with Representative Louderback and Representative Wilson on the interoperability conversation, and I want to be clear with this. Having met with DPS, but having had this conversation in 2011 when I came here, having seen Chairman Nichols try to address this over a decade, it is extremely complicated. That said, we have a whole lot of technology that I saw in action at DPS regarding IP addresses, even to the point cell phones and things were able to connect. Now, I'm not a technician and I'm not advocating that I know the answer, but there was a actual platform that seemed to coordinate no matter what P25, Motorola, or what any technologies were. So here's what I would suggest, and Chairman King's got more expertise in setting this up. If we go down this road, it will be a multi-discipline conversation at local, state, I don't know, include federal. That's another layer of anxiety. But if we're going to go down this road, and it ties into some of the other panels we hear with internet and how that works and what a vital resource that has become in these disaster recoveries, it will take time. It's not something we can decide in the next 4 weeks. But I personally am kind of frustrated and don't want to hear about it again after we get done. And what I mean by that, it needs to be holistic and very, very partnering and not turf building. And I don't want to leave you with the impression that's your job. It's these guys' jobs to set that format up and get to the bottom of what is possible and what it costs before we get out of here next session and through the interim. I have not had this question answered at any level. I've asked it 50 different ways, 50 different times over Sunday, and people have followed up, and there may be no legitimate answer. Back to Chairman Bonham's perspective, if you have the opportunity to kind of start at Hunt Store, and you see where the two rivers really come together, and then the bottleneck, the very narrow area that creates, you understand why shelter in place and higher ground is the only course of action we have today based on our early warning and what actionable items we assign to that. So I needed to know, when were the roads impassable? At what point in time? Was it 6 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock the Thursday afternoon, or could we have gotten people out at 1:15 a.m.? I think pretty clearly it was way early, because I don't know when the first low river crossing was, and that very narrow, 2-lane, very narrow road in and out of Hunt, Texas was locked up. So that is a critical point as we have conversations, called the ultimate change we make in this process, if we're able to make changes at all, is the best possible objective information to give to the local person designated as the evacuee call, the confidence to call that. We don't have technology. Well, let me back up. We may find that through July 31st hearings, there is technology that can do a better job and pinpoint rain bombs and those events. This area is not a rain bomb event every time, though. It doesn't take much on flat limestone rock. But we have to start with that as a basic principle, because if you have to evacuate under a threat of a 2-inch rain a day before, that's what you do, or you decide not to do and take the consequences. I understand making an evac call and all the conversations that go into it, especially on a July 4th weekend with many, many people in that area. But I have not found that. Do you know when the outside access in and out of that area was effectively non-existent?
So, Senator, I don't think I have the whole answer. I think I have part of the answer, and I'm hoping that I can give you a path to get to that full answer. And what we have from some of the discussion boards of the National Weather Service on July 4th at 3:19 a.m. It's the timestamp. This is part of the in-depth from the Mesonet discussion boards, and I know you're familiar with that, but please don't ask me to explain that for everybody else. The what at 3:19 a.m. was minor flooding is occurring and moderate flooding is forecast. The where is the Guadalupe River at Hunt. The when is from early this morning to just after midnight. I'm on July 4th now, 3:19 a.m. The impacts, this is what it says. At 18 feet, automobiles parked near the North Fork of the Guadalupe River at Camp Waldemar washed downstream. Roads and low bridges near the North and South Forks flood badly and are dangerous to motorists. The Highway 39 bridge floor near Hunt is 6 feet underwater. Some residents are cut off and should stay put. Secondary roads and bridges near the river are extremely dangerous to motorists. This is near USGS.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant. We are now at the top of the hour. It is 1 o'clock. Right there on your screen, you're looking at the Texas Senate and House Committees on Disaster Preparedness and Flooding. They're meeting at the Capitol building in Austin. They're talking about the aftermath of those the tragic flooding that happened in the Hill Country a few weeks ago there. So lawmakers there are discussing that. Up top on your top right, we are taking a look at inside where the White House briefing will take place. So we're waiting for that. That should start any moment now. Below that, CPAC Human Trafficking Summit. We saw House Speaker Mike Johnson there speaking just moments ago. All right, so let's shift from that and let's talk about this, because later on in the show, we will get an update from our friends over there on the sports team. We're talking about Panthers training camp.
Panthers. Is it like Christmas? Is it like?
It is.
Football's back?
You know, football season ends and you're like, all right, we got a Super Bowl champion. We have some time, because you have that bridge with the NBA.
Right.
But then you're like, man, I miss football. I miss having those games on Sundays and Saturdays if you're a college football fan. So to see the guys back with the pads on, back with the helmets on, training camp, day one.
It's a good day for it.
Is today. It is.
You know?
Perfect day, because usually years ago, back in the day,
boiling.
it was at Wofford College in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and it was
not much wind in Spartanburg.
hot.
It's
Not
hot.
much wind. I remember our sports team from when I worked in Greensboro. They were sent to Wofford College every year. And they would tell me how hot it was. So different story today, and even tomorrow, where it's going to be, it's hot outside, but it's cooler to what we've been dealing with. I'm excited. We will have Daniel Stein on at 2:30 to talk about day one of training camp. We had Nick Carboni on this morning. I got a chance to, I'm not always here for the 9 to 11 stream. Sometimes I pop my head in, but I popped my head in this morning, and I saw Carlene loading up Nick's live shot, and I said, might as well stay. What's the worst that could happen?
What's the worst that could happen?
So I stayed. Carlene allowed me to get a question in.
Of course.
I didn't really have a question.
You're the Panthers fan here now.
I didn't have a question. I just had a comment. That's the funny thing.
You always have something to say.
I always had something to say, and I will say this. So the Panthers, this team, and I'm not trying to jinx my guys. I made a bold prediction last year. I'm not going to do the same thing. I'm not going to make that same mistake this year. But the Panthers remind me of that 2003 team who went to the Super Bowl. This is why they remind me. I'll make it quick. 0-2, they finished strong. They win at home. They win in New Orleans against the Saints. A lot of optimism. Rodney Peete started quarterback, for those of y'all keeping score. This past year, or last season rather, we end strong. Another number 9, Bryce Young. That's another connection I just made. Rodney Peete wore number 9 back in 2002, 2003. Bryce Young, another number 9, played strong at the end of the year. We load up this year. We had the receivers, young receivers, big receivers. We have the defensive line, young defensive line. We have the offensive line. We have a running attack. I'm just putting it out there. Nobody's really thinking about us as far as Super Bowl champs or even making the playoffs at all.
Let's start there.
Nobody's thinking about that.
You start at 100. Let's start square one.
I'm just making the parallel.
Let's
parallel. I'm just making
Let's make the playoffs.
That's a good goal. My point is, people are not thinking about us making the playoffs. So I like us flying under the radar.
Yeah, I mean,
huge
nice
expectations.
to be the underdog. That's
I love it.
Everyone loves the underdog.
I love it. We were underdog back in 2003. So I will stop my rant right now. I will stop. I promise. I'm stopping. Today's day one of
Okay.
training camp. In about an hour and a half, we will hear from Danielle Stein. So I will move on from that, Carlene.
Okay.
I'm done.
Okay.
Carlene is done hearing me.
No.
Talk about
I
Panther
love
stuff.
hearing you talk about it. I do.
Oh,
You're so passionate about it.
I am
You know,
passionate.
someone's gotta be.
I'm passionate. I'm not going to unveil our conversation behind the scenes about coverage plans in case something happens.
Sure.
Because I don't want to jinx my guys.
Sure.
But just know I'm here for it.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. I promise. All right, so let's head now to Cornelius, where there is a development project happening. It sparked some controversy. And we want to toss it over to Walker Lawson, because Walker, I mean, you do everything transit, development. Am I missing anything? Road projects. So you brought it up in the morning meeting about this project in Cornelius. It's caused some controversy. Talk about what you're hearing, what the controversy is, and what that project is.
Yeah, well, I'll first start off by saying this is a unique, weird way to be talking to you through my phone via Zoom. But yes, so this plot of land that's actually behind me right here is located at the corner of the Jeton Road Extension and Bethel Church Road, which is located right here. The Jeton Road Extension's right here. So this plot of land will sit on the corner. Now, this development's been in discussion since April. So a developer came forward in hopes to build a 6-story building, which would take right here. It's going to be a mix of commercial space as well as residential units, but people in the area are more so nervous about the height of this project, and you can kind of see why. So behind me, obviously you see we have a lot of land, so there's no development here. There's no development behind me right here, and then I'm going to jog just down the street a little bit. It'll be a little loud down here. But you can see there are some buildings down here, but they are not 6 stories in height. So people that live here feel like this building would not fit or look appropriate in this area.
So Walker, are they concerned that that this is taking up space, or this is an eyesore, or are they just want to live in a more rural area? Like, what are the real concerns?
Yeah, so I actually just spoke to a neighbor here. I went to his home and just spoke to him, and he said the real concern is that this actually doesn't sit in the codes of Cornelius's plans for future development. This is something that is larger than what the Planning Commission typically approves in this area, and the Planning Commission actually recommended this building be shortened to only 3 stories instead of 6. But the developer basically said that's not feasible and that the project really wouldn't be worth doing if it was only 3 feet. So it still has more steps to go. But one resident I spoke to said there are multiple plots of land along this road behind me as well as the other road. And they said they are concerned that if they set the precedent of approving a 6-story building here, other developers will come forward on other plots of land that are up for sale and will try to change the area completely.
Walker Lawson there, live in Cornelius, jogging and walking and talking at the same time. The guy does it all, ladies and gentlemen.
Right?
Walker, thank you for your time. You can catch Walker at 4:30 with this story there in Cornelius. Again, Walker, thank you for your time. Be safe out there in Cornelius. All right, so we want to shift gears now to a story that's been that at times has dominated national headlines, and it's this: the Idaho College murders. That is on your top left. Brian Kohlberger. He is facing a sentencing hearing. And we are expected to, I guess we are hearing or expected to hear from families of the victims to speak ahead of this sentencing. Let's take a listen in to what's being said at this moment.
As Your Honor will recall, on June 18th, it's just really not that long ago, we appeared before this court for arguments on what became the defendant's final motions to this court. Motion where they wanted to offer evidence suggesting that other people were responsible for the defendant's actions, and the motion seeking essentially an indefinite continuance of the trial. It was readily apparent to all of us in the courtroom from Your Honor's comments that those motions were not going to be granted. So we returned to Moscow and continued with what we had been working on for months in preparation for trial. We had no qualms about going to trial if trial was what was necessary and appropriate. The following week, after we were in court, we were approached by the defense with an inquiry about a possible plea. And I can tell the court this is the first suggestion ever that there was any consideration, because indeed, the defense had maintained from the beginning that Mr. Koberger, the defendant, was factually innocent. It's clear that the reality of the evidence and the case that had been investigated and prepared and that we were ready to present in court became a reality. Our reaction, among other things, was to reach out to all the families. And in fact, later that week, on Thursday and Friday of that last week of June, we met with representatives by teams, virtual meetings, with representatives of all the families. And we talked about the status of the case and the upcoming trial and things that related to the trial. And we also let them know that there had been an inquiry about whether there might be an offer for a plea. And we asked the family members for their thoughts and feelings. And they were candid. And they have been candid since, and we respect that. And we understand, recognize, and acknowledge that there was a difference of opinion among representatives of the different families. We understand that. One of the challenges of this case, one of the unique things about this case is we have multiple victims, each unique unto themselves, their families and friends unique unto themselves, and all of them entitled to their opinions, all of them entitled to their thoughts. Over the following weekend, our prosecution team, very skilled attorneys who were personally as well as professionally deeply invested in this case, met. And we talked, and the decision was reached. Well, to start with, were there to be any sort of plea offer or discussion, there's only one possibility. And that would be for the defendant to plead guilty straight up to all charges. There would be no bargaining about counts. There would be no bargaining about reduced sentences. And so we made the proposal to the defense that if the defendant was willing to plead guilty up front to all 5 counts as charged and waive appeal of the court's myriad decisions during the past 2.5+ years on all these motions that would have consumed years, if not decades, of time in the future. By the end of the weekend, we were notified the defendant was prepared to plead guilty as charged and factually acknowledge his responsibility in court for these horrible crimes. Obviously, those discussions and negotiations were confidential. And as Your Honor noted, I believe that was necessarily so, because if the defendant had decided not to plead guilty, it would have been devastating to our jury pool for there to be public information that there had been consideration by either party to a plea resolution. And protecting the prospective integrity of a trial after so many years was paramount. So, the end of the weekend came. We notified the victims' families of what had occurred. I recognize and acknowledge personally, and I respect the fact that of these fine, suffering people here, not everybody agreed with the decision we make. I accept that. It's my responsibility in the end. I recognize that that's the duty of the office that I hold. So now, it is time for the judicial system to impose final judgment and close the door on this chapter of these tragedies. As the court is aware, by the agreement of the parties, it is the state's prayer. Perhaps have the Elmo police turned on. Thank you. That on count one, the felony burglary, that the court sentenced the defendant to the maximum period of 10 years fixed in the custody of the Idaho Department of Correction. Then on count two, that the court sentenced the defendant to fixed life for the murder of Maddie Mogan. On count three, that the court sentenced the defendant to fixed life for the murder of Kaylee Gonzalez. On count four, that the court sentenced the defendant to fixed life for the murder of Xana Kernodle. On count five, that the court sentenced the defendant to fixed life for the murder of Ethan Chapin. And the state further prays that these sentences be ordered to run consecutively, back to back, not at the same time, to recognize and respect the unique individuality of each of these beautiful young people whose lives were taken brutally and for no reason. And hopefully now, as we have heard earlier this morning, it is time to afford the families and the friends and the community and the state of Idaho and the nation and the world to move forward. We can't undo, and we can never undo, the horror of what occurred on the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022 at 1122 King Street in Moscow, Idaho. For a long time, the presiding district judge in Latah County was John Stegner, who eventually became a member and a justice of the Idaho Supreme Court. And Justice Stegner often observed that even God cannot change the past. But everyone in this room has the ability to take themselves forward. And we want the judicial system to afford them the opportunity today to do that. From today forward, our memories should be focused on these innocent victims whose lives were taken, on their families, on their friends, on the community. The court has heard discussion, talk today, reminiscences today about a special family that our victims shared, not just their natural, legal, and biological families, not just their university family within their sororities, for example, but this family. This is the picture taken on November 12th, 2022, of the special family of 1122 King Road. And you can see all 6 of these dynamic, vibrant, loving, special, innocent faces taken together just across the street from their residence. And barely 12 hours before 4 of them would be brutally murdered in their sleep. They've been described consistently as being bright, caring, vivacious, with futures we can only imagine now. But they were, and they remain, a special family that I think we should all recognize and appreciate. So it's time to move forward. There have been a number of statements directed specifically at the defendant today. I have one last thought. After Your Honor imposes judgment and sentences the defendant to spend the rest of his life in prison, in other words, sentence the defendant to die in prison, he's going to stand up in the belly chains and the leg irons that he's wearing today, and he's going to be escorted into the custody of the Idaho Department of Correction. And the door will close behind him forever. That is the closure that we seek, that all of these people, these loving friends and family deserve, so that we can move forward. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, does the defense have evidence to present today? No evidence. All right. Does defense wish to make argument today?
Runner, we do not wish to make arguments. Mr. Koberger, along with his legal team, is prepared for the court to enter judgment.
All right, Mr. Koberger, you have an opportunity to make a statement if you wish to. I take it you are declining.
I respectfully decline.
Well, please. All right, let me start this morning by acknowledging and thanking those that have come here today in support of their loved ones, and I appreciate your courage and your strength. And I hope that you are able to move on as best as possible. Thank counsel for the professionalism that they've exhibited throughout this case. It has been my great honor to preside in this case and to help bring, to the extent possible, some resolution and hopefully justice to this case. During the quiet morning hours of November 13, 2022, a faceless coward breached the tranquility of 6 beautiful young people and senselessly slaughtered them, 4 of them. Who committed this unspeakable evil was unknown for several weeks, but due to the killer's incompetence and outstanding police work by numerous local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, the person that slithered through that sliding glass door at 1122 King Road now stands before the world and this court unmasked. This unfathomable and senseless act of evil has caused immeasurable pain and loss. No parent should ever have to bury their child. This is the greatest tragedy that can be inflicted upon a person. Parents who took their children to college in a truck filled with moving boxes had to bring them home in hearses lined with coffins. The loss this killer inflicted was not just the death of these people's children, siblings, grandchildren, as we've heard today. It has ripped a hole in their soul, destroying a special part of their very essence. Any person who is a parent defines themselves foremost as such. It is their existence and purpose of being. And it has been stolen from these parents. None of us have experienced the loss these victims have in the unspeakable way that they have. And therefore, none of us can, nor should we, question the way in which they have handled their loss. Whether that be in private mourning, removed as far as possible from this media circus, or in front of a camera demanding retribution with the loudest megaphone. I've listened intently to the stories and pain that have been shared today, with great awe at the courage and resilience of the surviving family members of those wonderful children. I've listened also to the surviving roommates, both in person and through their friends. And I can't think of how, frankly, courageous they have been despite the hell that they have faced by uncaring people who have come up with all kinds of crazy theories about two kids simply being kids. The parents, siblings, and other family members who have spoken today are designated as victims in our legal system. But going forward, I hope that they can shed that label, as it gives too much power to the evil that condemned them to that role. They are and should be known as survivors, fighters, and foremost as witnesses to the tremendous lives of value and unbounded promise of these four young people. But those speaking today and those who did not speak, but who carry this same burden, this same loss, now carry forward the memories of these now perpetually young people, these forever children. These survivors carry the responsibility of ensuring that the voices of these children, Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan, are never forgotten, and the positive impacts that they have had on so many lives are never minimized, and that the love they shared, the light that they shined onto others is forever celebrated. As we sit here today, this case is ending, and we are now certain who committed these unspeakable acts of evil, but we don't know, and what we may never know is why. I share the desire expressed by others to understand the why. But upon reflection, it seems to me, and this is just my own opinion, that by continuing to focus on why, we continue to give Mr. Kohberger relevance. We give him agency and we give him power. The need to know what is inherently not understandable makes us dependent upon the defendant to provide us with a reason, and that gives him the spotlight, the attention, and the power he appears to crave. Yet even if I could force him to speak, which legally I cannot, how could anyone ever be assured that what he speaks is the truth? Do we really believe, after all of this, he's capable of speaking the truth or of giving up something of himself to help the very people whose lives he destroyed? Rather, I suspect the so-called reason would be dished out in enticing, self-serving, and aggrandizing, untruthful bits, leaving people wanting more information, more insight, and thus enhancing even further the power he seeks to hold. Even if we could get truthful insight into his why, I suspect it would not in any way quench one's thirst for actually understanding why in the first instance. Because there is no reason for these crimes that could approach anything resembling rationality. No conceivable reason could make any sense. And in the end, the more we struggle to seek explanation for the unexplainable, the more we try to extract a reason, the more power and control we give to him. In my view, the time has now come to end Mr. Kohberger's 15 minutes of fame. It's time that he be consigned to the ignominy and isolation of perpetual incarceration. I know there has been concern about him collaborating on books or movies or other media projects, and I truly hope that someone does not stoop to affording him this spotlight that he desires in the name of clicks, royalties, or profits. While criminal behavioralists should study him away from the spotlight in an attempt to prevent other would-be killers from acting on their worst impulses, there should be no need for that to spill over into the public eye. The great Idaho jurist Edward Lodge was known for trying to find something positive about every person he ever sentenced. And with over a half a century as a trial judge, that was a lot of people. This was often challenging, and I recall in one case he said that the best he could come up with was the defendant had good penmanship. Truth be told, I'm unable to come up with anything redeeming about Mr. Kohberger because his grotesque acts of evil have buried and hidden anything that might have been good or intrinsically human about him. His actions have made him the worst of the worst. Even in pleading guilty, his giving nothing hinting of remorse or redemption, nothing suggesting even a recognition or understanding, let alone regret for the pain that he has caused. And therefore, I will not attempt to speak about him further, other than to simply sentence him so that he is forever removed from civilized society. And accordingly, based upon his conduct and based upon the record before this court, recognizing the standards that govern this court's sentencing decisions as set forth in State v. Toohill, I hereby sentence Mr. Kohberger as follows. On count 1, burglary, 10 years fixed, 0 years indeterminate. I also impose a fine of $50,000. Count 2, first-degree murder of Madison Mogan. I sentence the defendant to a fixed term of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, a fine of $50,000, and a civil penalty of $5,000 payable to the family of the victim. On count 3, for first-degree murder of Kaylee Gonsalves, I sentence the defendant to a fixed term of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, a fine of $50,000, and a civil penalty of $5,000 payable to the victim of the family, or to the family of the victim, pardon me. On count 4, for the first-degree murder of Xana Kernodle, I sentence the defendant to a fixed term of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, a fine of $50,000, and a civil penalty of $5,000 payable to the family of the victim. On count 5, for the first-degree murder of Ethan Chapin, I sentence the defendant to a fixed term of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, a fine of $50,000, and a civil penalty of $5,000 payable to the family of the victim. The sentences on counts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 shall run consecutively to one another. Restitution will be left open for 60 days. Defendant will be required to submit a DNA sample and a right thumbprint impression to the Department of Corrections and comply with the DNA Database Act. I remand the defendant to the custody of the Idaho State Board of Corrections for to be imprisoned in an appropriate facility in execution of the sentence where he will remain until he dies. Though you have waived your right to appeal, you do have a right to file a notice of appeal, and any such appeal must be filed within 42 days of the date of the written judgment. which will be entered shortly hereafter. Though the appeal, you should be aware, may be deemed a violation of the plea agreement, and so I certainly suggest you discuss that with counsel if that is your desire. I ask the media and public present to allow the families to be escorted out first before they leave. Again, thank you to everyone for your stories today. I am strengthened by them, and I am encouraged by your humanity and strength, and God bless you. We're adjourned.
All right, so you're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Up next, third event, it is 1:35. There you were watching the sentencing of Bryan Kohberger. As we heard there, given 4 life sentences without parole for the brutal stabbing deaths of 4 Idaho University students nearly 3 years ago, back in 2022. The judge, emotional, giving his speech there before sentencing. We want to take you now to King 5, our content partners there in Seattle, Washington, and their coverage and recap after we just learned Bryan Kohberger's sentence. Let's take a listen in.
Judge Timothy Bradshaw has been watching this hearing with me. Your reaction to how this all went down?
So we wanted to know whether the murderer would speak. So the judge quickly told him he had that right. His attorneys glossed over that and quickly indicated that he would not take that opportunity. As we touched on before, he might be a person without empathy, and for him to do so perhaps would have been counterproductive. Maybe he feels no remorse, so how can he express it? There was a public suggestion, very public earlier, that he could be required to give answers, to speak. That's just not legally accurate.
Yes, all he said was, "I respectfully decline," when asked if he had anything to say.
Right.
Prior to that, we've only heard him say the word guilty 5 different times.
That's right.
We heard from, in this hearing, from the family of Madison Mogen. We heard from the Gonzalez family, Kernodle family as well, and the 2 surviving roommates who were in the house at the time, and what a poignant picture of the 6 of them the day before these murders happened. When the judge talked about the fact that Kohberger has waived his right to appeal as part of this plea agreement, but he can file a motion to appeal. Explain that. What does that mean?
I think that's just a technicality indicating that he has that right. I think that would be, if he did that, it would be confined to solely challenge the entry of the guilty plea, which is why the judge was so thorough at that time, going through the colloquy with the defendant, that this was out of his own free will, he wasn't coerced, etc.
The one question that a lot of people had is, can he profit from this, right? I mean, he got life in prison without the possibility of parole. He will go through all these appeals, but he could still technically profit from this, write a book, tell his story. The judge obviously addressed that, but he didn't prohibit him from doing so. Did that surprise you, and can the judge do that?
That was disappointing, and I was critical of that when I was here last at the guilty plea, because I believe the prosecuting attorney has the authority to require that as part of the plea bargain. The contract that is made at that time, that's a condition that could have been agreed to. So that begs the question whether on his own accord the judge had the authority today to simply impose that as a condition of the sentence, as a term of the sentence, that he cannot profit in any way from his story, from the crimes. Or if he is compensated in any way, those funds would be earmarked for a victims organization or something like that. So I was listening, I was hoping that that would be the case. I don't know why it's not. I know that passes constitutional muster in the state of Washington. I don't know if there's a legal prohibition in Idaho. I doubt it, so I think that was a oversight, particularly because the judge referenced that as an issue. So I'm not sure why that wasn't anticipated.
The other surprising thing that you mentioned during this hearing when the prosecutor was talking is that he actually revealed that it was the defense that brought up the idea of a plea agreement, right? And that's usually confidential.
That's right. Obviously, the prosecutor seems thorough and well-meaning and honorable and genuine. It did seem as if he was taking the opportunity to explain himself, to explain why his office entered into this plea bargain in the first place. So the behind-the-scenes machinations are usually confidential. They definitely are in this state. So that was surprising too.
Well, and I think that surprised a lot of the victims' families. They were not anticipating this. They were getting ready for a trial.
Right.
And so that explains sort of how that unfolded and how they came to that agreement, right?
Obviously, he was trying to justify the plea bargain.
Yeah.
That's very clear,
Yeah, for sure. The one thing that was interesting is that there was only one person out of everybody who spoke today who actually offered Kohberger forgiveness, and that was Xana Kernodle's aunt the first time. I mean, we saw a range of emotions today from the victims' loved ones, for sure. And even the judge himself. You and I were talking during the break, wondering if he would actually say anything and address Kohberger, and he did.
He did.
What did you think of that? And as a judge who's been through these hearings before, how does that impact or affect the victims' families and or potentially the defendant?
So keep in mind the context here. So there's a trajectory of justice. There's a cadence to what we're doing in court. So we begin with the determination that we're going to presume this person innocent, and that is proper. The judge all along has been doing his best to rule, but ensuring due process. Then there's the determination of guilt. He obviously pled guilty. Today, there's a determination of what is justice, what is a proper sentence. So at this point, it becomes a bit awkward for a judge. The judge is sitting there. There's so much symbolism in what we just saw. The judge is in a black robe because that's to show neutrality, to ensure everyone's rights equally. At this point, that is shed, and he's talking about the impact of that guilt. So he didn't hold back.
Yeah, he didn't.
He called him evil, snake, and a coward. So obviously he felt comfortable doing that. But at the same time, it seems as if this defendant earned it.
Yeah. Judge, thank you very much for your insight. Appreciate it. Let's get to Jake Wittenberg, who is live outside the Ada County Courthouse right now. Jake, I see there's people behind you. Have you seen anybody come out of the courthouse at this point?
Yeah, hey there, Mimi. We're awaiting the family to exit the courthouse here and presumably head right to the podium behind us, where you can see there's just a large group of media, a huge number of media that are awaiting to hear what they have to say. When that happens, we'll go right to that. But I also have to say I was struck by what Mr. Bradshaw just said there about the emotion from the judge today. Really ending that hearing today with a punctuation mark. I especially was struck by the moment when Judge Hibbler pulled up the picture of the 4 of those students, reminding us that that picture was taken just hours before they were killed. And he was clearly emotional about it, having to pause several times, as we heard there, getting choked up as he talked about their lives, saying pointedly he is ending the 15 minutes of fame for Bryan Kohberger and relegating him to confinement and taking him away from civil society. Just the emotion that came at the end of this. And as you mentioned, Mimi, that sort of moment in the middle of that second session this morning after the Gonzalez family, we heard from the Kernodle family, Xana Kernodle's aunt and uncle, using the words of the defendant, Bryan Kohberger, just the only 2 times we heard that name all morning long, actually saying, as you mentioned, that they forgive him, even turning to Bryan Kohberger at one point and saying, call me, tell me what you were doing, and I will offer you forgiveness, which I thought was a very powerful moment as well. But they went right back into other family members who took the time to berate Kohberger, and in the end, Kohberger himself deciding not to speak, saying, quote, I respectfully decline, just 3 words.
Give us an idea, Jake. You've been there all morning long outside this courthouse. Keep in mind, this case was moved from Latah County to Ada County in Boise. It was the hearing in the largest courtroom there is in that courthouse, but this is a spectacle. I mean, there's been so much national media attention on this case, as you can see behind you. There's a number of media people who are there to cover this case. You've got bloggers and people who are, not necessarily journalists, but people who have an interest in the case trying to get into the courthouse. Describe the scene out there.
Yeah, Mimi, like you, been in the business many, many years, and every year you seem to see more and more media at events like these because of bloggers and publications, and so there's a tremendous amount of interest here. Yesterday, in the evening hours, the first 50 spots were already full nearly with really non-mainstream media and journalists looking to get inside, internet bloggers, internet sleuths who tried to get in to get a glimpse of this. In the end, it was sorted out. 50 people in, 50 members of the media in. Throughout the day, we've seen people driving by, honking their horns. We're all set up here on the sidewalk here on this main street outside of the Ada County Courthouse. We're seeing people, throngs of people, come by just to get a glimpse of this spectacle out here because they know what's happening here in Boise. People waiting in line saying, I'm not connected to the University of Idaho. I'm not connected to anything except for just my interest in this case. So that has been very eye-opening, and it really lends itself to the gravity here. But really, that punctuation mark from the judge, putting this all to a close, that's the end of the story. It's ending before lunch, which I think was a surprise to many.
Right. I mean, the judge did allow for this to potentially go into tomorrow, but the hearing has just wrapped up after about 2.5 hours. Again, we've heard from all of the victims' families except the Chapin family, who did not even offer a statement. You're looking now at Steve Gonzalez, who, wow, his statement was directed solely at Brian Kober. He was the first one to turn that podium around and speak directly at him with anger and disgust. And we also heard from Kaylee's sister, Olivia, who also had a list of questions that she has been wondering for a long time. Jake, I think one of the things that we're going to potentially find out more about. We didn't necessarily get any answers today at today's hearing, but we could because the judge has lifted the gag order. It looks like someone's coming to the podium right now. Can we listen in to this?
Thanks so much.
All right. It appears that...
Well, it's almost been 3 years, and today's the end of a long, hard-fought battle. But we have our person, and we have him where he belongs. So for that, we are thankful for all the men and women that put the work together, put this case together, and once it's part of the court system, it was a little ugly, but we got that conviction, and we're glad to be moving on. Glad we can move on.
But then, there's also the fact that, what would he tell as a lie as to opposed to the truth, so.
The knife, if he gave the knife up, or if he gave a part of his kill kit, if he gave out facts that only the killer would know.
It would corroborate things.
It would corroborate things, and he even addressed there's been way too many conspiracies, and the surviving witnesses had to go through hell. Well, no better way to protect them than by getting some of those details. If you got those details, then as simple as just saying I did it solo would have been valuable, I think. And we stand by the negotiation wasn't justice. It was just a shortcut, and we said from the very beginning we're not interested in a shortcut for our daughter. And we wanted everything.
Steve, you turned the podium at one point. Talk to us about why you wanted to stare him face down.
Because he's a coward. He's been protected by the court from day one, the minute that he was arrested. So I wanted to let him know that I was directing everything towards him, and his days of being protected are coming to an end. From what I've been explained, he gets on a van today, and he's got like 11-12 minute ride, and then he'll be the responsibility of Idaho State.
Were you planning on turning the podium though, or did you do that?
I remember reading it saying do not move. So I was like, well, I'm moving this. I just kind of made that decision right then and there. So I I want to make it as difficult as possible. I knew my daughter was going to do a speech, and I'd heard it, and I was like, he's going to hate this. He's going to hate this next set of people that are going to come forward and really rip into him and really expose him for what kind of a piece of trash he was. And we've been waiting a long time to say some of those things that needed to be said.
Stephen Jr., you chose not to speak. Speak now or
I've written up a statement. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe this is where you do.
Okay. Well, allow me a second.
Maybe it wasn't court appropriate.
Yeah, it wasn't. Definitely wasn't. Yeah, my name's Steve Gonzalez. I'm Kaylee's older brother. She was my little sister, my friend, the middle child in the heart of our family. There are no words that can fully describe her spirit, but if you knew her, you knew joy, you knew light, you knew someone who made everything better just by being in the room. My statement was largely grounded in one goal, and that was to do everything for anyone who listens to this and has to go through something similar to not have to endure what we had. My family's fought tirelessly, not just for answers, but for accountability. We've stood in front of cameras, behind closed doors, and across from people who didn't want us to speak, but we did, and we won't stop now. Across nearly every murder case prosecuted by Bill Thompson, including the killing of University of Idaho football player Eric McMillan, there is a clear and troubling pattern. Families are left feeling unheard, justice is negotiated down through plea deals, and the public is left with unanswered questions. In the McMillan case, charges were reduced from first-degree to second-degree murder, prompting confusion and outrage from the victim's family and community. The same pattern is emerged in the Silas Parks and John Lee cases, both of which prosecuted by Bill Thompson, where capital-eligible crimes were resolved through plea agreements, sidestepping trials and diminishing public accountability. The most egregious of these crimes was the brutal killing of Whitney Parks, a young pregnant woman whose life was taken by her husband Silas Parks during a violent domestic assault. Whitney was only 22 years old. Whitney was beaten and strangled in her own home, an act of cruelty that not only ended her life, but also the life of her unborn child. And yet, despite the devastating nature of this crime, Bill Thompson reduced the charges from murder to voluntary manslaughter, ultimately securing a sentence that allowed Parks the possibility of parole after just 5 years. There was no trial, no full accounting of what Whitney endured, no acknowledgement in the legal outcomes of the child she was carrying. For Whitney's family, for anyone who believes that justice system should speak forcefully for victims, this wasn't justice. It was a deal, and it was like so many others under Thompson's watch. It prioritized expedience over accountability. Now, almost predictably, we find ourselves reliving that pattern in the current case. Despite the magnitude and brutality of the crime, the prosecution chose to accept a plea deal behind closed doors, without trial, without ever consulting our family in any meaningful way. In fact, we learned from the plea deal that had been finalized from an email from the prosecution team. Not in person, not with warning, not with respect. That moment underscored what we feared all along, and that this case was following the same well-worn path toward expedience over justice. Sentencing once again fails to reflect the severity of the act, and the emotional fallout has landed again on the shoulders of the victims' families, who have been left out, unheard, and grieving not just a horrific loss, but a system that continues to bypass them. The through line is undeniable. Whether it's 2004 or 2025, this prosecutional, is that a word? Sorry. Prosecutional approach has consistently abandoned the very approach it is, or the very people it is supposed to protect. The trend you'll notice from Thompson's prosecuted crimes are the following: plea bargains avoiding capital punishment, charge reductions, sentences that misalign with the gravity of the crime, lack of trial due to plea bargains. These aren't just failures in process, they're failures that have real consequences for real people. After reviewing Bill Thompson's history, it's clear our family was never given a fair chance at justice, but this isn't just about a prosecutor's record, it's about Kaylee. It's about my sister. She's not just one of the Idaho 4. She was a daughter, a sister, a best friend, and the light in every room she walked into. When the prosecution followed the same path we've seen before, closed doors, limited input, and a plea deal handed down without our voice, it became painfully clear that Kaylee was being treated just like another case. But she wasn't. She was everything to us, and our pain has only deepened, knowing that the system didn't fight for her the way she deserved. I'll leave everyone with this. There's 1,000 things I wish I could say to Kaylee, but today I'll just say this. I will always carry her with me for the rest of my life, and I will never stop being her brother.
Steve,
thank you.
Now that the gag order is lifted, is there anything that you learned over the last 2.5 years from the investigators or the prosecutors that you can share with us now and speak about?
Well, I think it was kind of interesting that once the president sent a truth statement out, they called us right up and they told us everything. So I don't know what was holding them back before, but we spent about 3 hours, close to 3 hours with the lead detectives, and yeah, we found because our main thing was we didn't want to have victims advocate statements that had lies and misquotes and misinformation in it. So I appreciate the president, putting a little bit of pressure on there, and it seemed to work. Up until that time, they told us they were not going to tell us, and we were going to have to just wait for the things to be unsealed. But yeah, it was horrific what Kaylee went through. Yeah, and I don't want to protect this guy, but I won't give out all the details. I'll be general. But yeah, she was stabbed over 30 plus times, and she was struck, and there was quite a bit of damage to her face. So this guy's just an absolute monster. Anyone who thinks that he's otherwise, I just looked at pure demons out there. When I was looking at him, we had a stare down, and he's just filled with demons. He's dark pits of eyes, and there's something seriously wrong with that man.
Steve, why was it important for you to look him directly in the eyes? And what did you see as you spoke to him?
I looked him straight in the eyes, and I just seen black holes and just anger at me. He was telling me with his face that he fucking hated me. He absolutely fucking hated me.
And why did you want to speak to him directly that way?
It's the most personal one. Like,
yeah,
look at me in my eyes. You took my daughter's life. Look at me.
Yeah,
Did your family get something today that it needed?
Yeah, 100%.
It's a little early to actually even answer that for myself. I think that kind of stuff needs to set in and sink in, and you regret maybe saying some things, or you wish that you would have said things. So I think right now we're just kind of in the mix of the tornado and the real feelings.
As the spotlight then fades, what do you want the public to remember?
Our main thing is hopefully this could be a template for another family that, you can use the media as much as they're using you. You can use it to keep people accountable, keep people honest, keep the court system, treating you with a little bit of respect. And I think that's what we did. And the more that you get active, I think the more chance that you're going to get that justice in the end. I think you really got to try to make your kids stand out, or whoever you're trying to protect, you to make them real. Get on the internet and talk to people.
Before you go, and I know you want to go, I want to ask Olivia today was spectacular. But Olivia asked the question, what was the other weapon on my sister? Despite this meeting you had with the prosecutors, there still sounds like there's something still in there. Can you explain that to us?
No, we do know that another weapon was used on Kaylee. So we don't know what that weapon was. But
they didn't recover it.
Along with the knife wasn't recovered, but Kaylee was not just stabbed. There was other things that happened to Kaylee.
Talk about that a little. The conversation we had with the prosecution was about healing more than anything. It was about giving the victims' families answers. And they may share some of that information at a later date, but today is not the day for that. Today is about the sentencing. It's about putting the defendant in prison for the rest of his life. So there may be more details to come about that, but that conversation that they had was about the healing process and finding some answers that they had. And so we may share at a later date, but today's not the day, okay?
Thank you guys for being available.
Thanks.
Shannon.
So the Gonzalez.
All right, so you're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Right there is our content partners there in Seattle, Washington, King 5. Their coverage, that is my chair. Their coverage after Brian Kohlberger was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences without parole for the brutal stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students nearly 3 years ago. We just heard from the family of Kaylee Goncalves. And again, they got an opportunity to talk about how they're feeling, giving their reaction after this sentencing. Again, this is a story that we are continuing to follow and continuing to cover. And as more updates come, we will update you. And if we hear from more victims' families, we will take you there directly. But for now, we want to take you to the White House press briefing that is happening. They also mention the Kohlberger, or talked about the Kohlberger sentencing at the top of this, but we're right here in the middle of this White House briefing. That is Tulsi Gabbard on your screen. She is the Director of National Intelligence for the Trump administration. Let's listen in to what she is saying right now.
Not ridiculous. The intelligence community assessment omitted reliably sourced information, such as how some Russian intelligence officials were quote unquote planning for candidate Hillary Clinton's victory, while others assessed neither Trump nor Clinton would respect Russia's interests. As was reflected in the ODNI documents that we released on Friday, multiple intelligence community assessments released in the months leading up to the November 2016 election concluded that Russia had neither the intent nor capability to impact the outcome of the U.S. election. On December 5th of 2016, the FBI and ODNI gave the House Intelligence Committee its first post-election classified briefing, in which there was no mention of Putin aspiring to elect Trump by either agency. The Presidential Daily Brief, drafted on December 8th of 2016, stated that no Russian or criminal actors impacted vote counts. This document was pulled just hours before it was to be published due to quote-unquote new guidance. If it had been published, it would have been briefed to both President Obama and President-elect Donald Trump. On December 9th, 2016, a National Security Council meeting was called to gather President Obama's senior national security officials, which included CIA Director Brennan, then Obama DNI James Clapper, Susan Rice, and others. Following that secret meeting, DNI Clapper's assistant sent an email to the intelligence community with the subject line, POTUS tasking on Russia election meddling, tasking ODNI leaders to create a new assessment per the president's request. The House Intelligence Committee Oversight Report that we released today reveals that, quote, unlike routine intelligence community analysis, the intelligence community assessment was a high-profile product ordered by the president, President Obama. It directed senior intelligence community agency heads and created an intelligence community assessment limited to just 5 analysts, using one principal drafter. This is not something that occurs in the normal path of producing an intelligence community assessment that reflects the views across the intelligence community. The production of this intelligence community assessment was subject to unusual directives directly from the president and senior political appointees, especially the former director of the CIA, John Brennan. The House Intelligence Committee Oversight Report also shows how later that same day, on December 9th, Brennan ordered the publication of quote-unquote substandard reporting on activities, which had previously been withheld from publication of prior assessments because the information was judged, quote, to have not met long-standing publication standards. Some of the information later used in the Obama-ordered assessment over the objections of veteran CIA officers was quote-unquote unclear or from unknown sources. The Intelligence Committee's Oversight Report reveals that CIA Director Brennan overruled senior CIA officers who challenged the Obama-ordered intelligence assessment, stating, quote, we don't have direct information that Putin wanted to get Trump elected. Yet, the Obama-directed assessment was published on January 6, 2017, which explicitly stated, quote, We assess Putin and the Russian government aspired to help President-elect Trump's election chances when possible by discrediting Secretary Clinton and publicly contrasting her unfavorably to him." End of quote. The CIA and FBI, then led by John Brennan and James Comey, expressed high confidence in this judgment, while the NSA expressed moderate confidence. Yet, as the report we released today shows, the ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment, did not cite any report where Putin indicated helping Trump win was an objective. The opposite is true. With regards to the Steele dossier, we now know that one of the source documents that the Obama administration used in the creation of this intelligence assessment in January of 2017 was none other than the discredited, unverified Steele dossier. The House Intel report states, quote, contradicting public claims by then CIA Director Brennan that the dossier was not in any way incorporated into this intelligence assessment. The dossier was referenced in the intelligence assessment's main body text and further detailed in a 2-page assessment annex. John Brennan lied, and he denied using this dossier in this intelligence assessment that President Obama ordered because he knew it was discredited. It was a politically motivated, manufactured document. He directed senior CIA officials to use it anyway. CIA officer told the House Intelligence Committee staff as they investigated this, quote, the director of the CIA, John Brennan, refused to remove it, and when confronted with the dossier's many flaws, responded, quote, yes, but doesn't it ring true? Even the bipartisan Senate Select Committee on Intelligence report published in 2020 criticized the FBI's handling of the Steele dossier, noting its completely unverified nature and purposeful sidestepping of intelligence community procedures in its use. Now, President Obama, Hillary Clinton, John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, and others, including their mouthpieces in the media, knowingly lied as they repeated the contrived narrative that was created in this January 2017 intelligence community assessment with high confidence as though it were fact. John Brennan, as CIA director, stated in a memo to his agency staff in December of 2016, saying, quote, there is strong consensus among us on the scope, nature, and intent of Russian interference in our presidential election. This was reported by NBC News, confirming that Brennan, along with James Clapper and James Comey, agreed with the CIA's assessment that Russia intervened to help Trump win the presidency. As Obama's Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper was tasked with overseeing the creation of this assessment in January of 2017 by President Obama, and he expressed confidence in its findings. In a 2018 interview with the Harvard Gazette, he talked about how he provided Trump with the same classified assessment that President Obama received, which included the high confidence judgment that Putin directly ordered the hacking and election interference. Clapper then went on to add, I think they, the Russians, actually influenced the outcome. This is a brief summary of the details that you'll find within the House Majority Staff's report in their investigation into the Obama-directed January 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment that leads us to the very same conclusion that we announced in the release of our documents on Friday. The implications of this are far-reaching and have to do with the integrity of our democratic republic. It has to do with an outgoing president taking action to manufacture intelligence to undermine and usurp the will of the American people in that election and launch what would be a years-long coup against the incoming President of the United States, Donald Trump. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tulsi. And we do want to take questions on this topic while the director has time for this topic. She will leave. I'm happy to take questions on other matters after that. But if anyone has questions for Director Gabbard, you're welcome to ask them. We'll start with our new media seat as always. Emily, go ahead.
Thank you. And Director Gabbard, this one is for you. Do you believe that any of this new information implicates former President Obama in criminal behavior?
We have referred and will continue to refer all of these documents to the Department of Justice and the FBI to investigate the criminal implications of this.
For even former
the
President
evidence,
Obama?
Correct. The evidence that we have found and that we have released directly point to President Obama leading the manufacturing of this intelligence assessment. There are multiple pieces of evidence and intelligence that confirm that fact.
Ed, go ahead.
Director Gabbard, thank you. So just to, two questions, but to begin on that. The president yesterday, you've inferred that the former president helped lead a coup. Based on what you now see, do you believe President Obama is guilty of treason?
I'm leaving the criminal charges to the Department of Justice. I am not an attorney, but as I've said previously, when you look at the intent behind creating a fake manufactured intelligence document that directly contradicts multiple assessments that were created by the intelligence community, the expressed intent and what followed afterward can only be described as a years-long coup and a treasonous conspiracy against the American people, our republic, and an attempt to undermine President Trump's administration.
The Senate Intelligence Committee spent several years looking into this and unanimously agreed in a bipartisan fashion, Secretary of State Rubio was a member of that committee, that there was no political interference. There was a years-long Justice Department investigation into this as well that also concluded no political interference. So help us, from a 50,000-foot level, explain, what do you now have that refutes those two conclusions?
Sure. I will encourage you, in my role as the Director of National Intelligence, my job, again, as I said when I came into this role, was to make sure that we are telling the truth to the American people and that we are ensuring that the intelligence community is not being politicized. So I'm not asking you to take my word for it. I'm asking you and the media to conduct honest journalism and the American people to see for yourself in the documents that we've released now, close to 200 pages, that point in multiple references, multiple examples, to include comments that have been made by senior intelligence professionals, who are some still working within these agencies today, that confirm the conclusions that we have drawn, that President Obama directed an intelligence community assessment to be created to further this contrived false narrative that ultimately led to a years-long coup to try to undermine President Trump's presidency.
And it's your belief that those two previous investigations missed that or covered it up?
I'm telling you to look at the evidence. Look at the evidence and you will know the truth.
John.
Thanks, Caroline. Thanks, Director Gabbard. You declassified these documents, if I'm not mistaken, Friday of last week, correct?
We released them on Friday of last week, the first tranche, yes.
This isn't the first time that President Trump has been president of the United States. He was president from 2017 to 2021. Couldn't the prior DNI under President Trump have declassified these documents? And why didn't that DNI do that at that time?
I can't speak to what happened there. There were several DNIs under the first Trump administration. President Trump faced many challenges from those who were working in the government who sought to undermine his presidency. That's been clearly detailed. What I can speak to is the fact that this was one of the first things that we started to investigate here within this Trump administration and have released the results upon the conclusion of our investigation.
And then my second question has to do with what intelligence agencies around the world have said about Russia, that they have tried to influence elections in the United States, in France, in Germany, in the UK. Do you disagree with that? Do you believe that Russia is a bad actor as it relates to trying to influence elections?
I'll point back to the intelligence that President Trump has ordered declassified, that we have declassified and released, that the intelligence reflects Russia's motives were to try to sow discord and chaos within the U.S. election, which is a clear distinction from showing a preference for or against a specific candidate, which is what the Obama manufactured intelligence document alleges, that Russia preferred Donald Trump and tried to help Donald Trump get elected. Again, going back to the most important point here, with the intent to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump's election and therefore subvert the will of the American people who chose to send him to the White House.
Reagan.
Thanks, Caroline. Director Gabbard, Reagan Reese with the Daily Caller. You laid out that the documents revealed that the Obama administration did not publish a December 2016 presidential daily briefing that demonstrated that Russia did not steal the election. Trump was receiving these briefings at the time because he was president-elect. Are you of the view that that information was kept out of the briefing because then President-elect Donald Trump would have seen it?
I don't have any documents that speak to exactly what the new guidance was that was given as the reason for pulling that document, which, by the way, still has never been published until we released it last week, Friday. One could assume that they didn't want President Trump to see a document that came from the intelligence community that would contradict the Russia hoax narrative that began through the Hillary Clinton campaign with the Steele dossier.
One more, maybe either for you or Caroline. The president said yesterday that Obama committed treason. Do you or the White House believe that the Supreme Court's immunity decision protects Obama from prosecution?
Look, I can speak to the president's feelings on this matter. He spoke to all of you yesterday in the Oval Office, but I also spoke to him about this morning. And he wants to see all those who perpetuated this fraud against our country, who betrayed our country and the Constitution, to be thoroughly investigated and held accountable. And it's been 10 years of this, and I would just add, based on everything the director has said and declassified, all of you in this room should go through it and take a look at this report and review the intelligence, because unfortunately that hasn't happened. And many of the people who perpetuated this hoax, Clapper, Andy McCabe, James Comey, and many others, have been hired by major networks in this room to go on television and continue to spew these lies, knowing that they are lies. And if you all recall, just flashback to 2016 and the years after, the entire Trump 1 presidency was embroiled in this scandal that was perpetuated by the Democrat Party. And you had major Democrat Party officials in this city, namely Adam Schiff, Hillary Clinton, Elizabeth Warren, who went on television and told the American people Donald Trump is an asset of Russia. It was a lie. They always knew it. Hillary Clinton herself said that President Trump would be a puppet for Putin. Senator Tim Kaine at the time called President Trump Vladimir Putin's defense lawyer. Adam Schiff stated, and one of the worst things a lawmaker can do is to tell the American people, I know something you don't know, it's just classified and I can't tell you. And that's what he said. I can tell you that the case is more than that. I can't go into the particulars, but there is more than circumstantial evidence now. And not enough people in this room, not enough journalists in this country pushed Adam Schiff to say, what are you talking about? What evidence do you have? Everybody just ran with the lies, and it led to impeachments. It led to the division of our country. Unfortunately, so many Americans, from listening to outlets in this room, believed in these lies. And it's a complete scam, and it's a scandal, and the president wants to see accountability for that. Phil.
Thank you. Question for Director Gabbard. A spokesperson for former President Obama said in a statement earlier this week, quote, nothing in the documents issued last week undercuts the widely accepted conclusion that Russia worked to influence the 2016 election but did not successfully manipulate any votes. How do you respond to critics like former President Obama and also others on the Hill who say that the administration is conflating apples and oranges here, conflating allegations of actual hacking of voter machines and allegations of interference generally?
I think it's a disservice to the American people that former President Obama's office and others who are criticizing the transparency that is being delivered by releasing these documents. They are doing a disservice to the American people and trying to deflect away from their culpability in what is a historic scandal and negative action towards the American people and our democratic republic. The answer to that statement can very clearly be found throughout all of the documents that we have released. Again, showing that Russia has took action to try to sow discord in the election, but showed no preference for or against any singular candidate.
You've long been an opponent of weaponization in government. How do you respond to criticism that referring Obama administration officials and even potentially the former president is just more weaponization and this is a potential race to the bottom?
I think that's a very disrespectful attack on the American people who deserve the truth. They deserve to have faith and trust in the integrity of our democratic republic, which has been undermined by President Obama through his direction of this manufactured fake intelligence document, knowing that it was filled with lies and knowing that it would and could then be used for all of the actions that came after.
Caroline? And I would just add there needs to be accountability for that weaponization, Phil, that we've seen. And no one has been a victim of the weaponized government more than President Trump, not just because of this political scandal. You all recall his house was raided. So I think, it's very disingenuous for people to say, how dare they speak of former President Obama about this based on evidence and based on intelligence, when the former President of the United States, Donald Trump's home was raided, when he was forced to sit in a Manhattan courtroom and many other courtrooms across the country for crimes he never committed, when he was impeached and indicted, and the entire country witnessed that. That's the weaponization of justice. Now the president is back because the American people see the truth. Nearly 80 million Americans reelected him back to this office, and he believes that we need to have justice and accountability. And I think the nearly 80 million Americans who reelected him agree with that. Caitlin.
Thank you, Caroline. Two questions for Director Gabbard just on this. Director Gabbard, you referenced the past intelligence reports and assessments on this, including that 2017 one that was signed off, as Ed noted, by every Republican on the Senate Intelligence Community, including the acting chair of the time, now Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who said in a statement that they did not find any evidence of Russian collusion, but they did find, however, is very troubling, and they found irrefutable evidence of Russian meddling. One, are you saying that he's wrong in that statement that he made then? And secondly, what would you say to people who believe that you're only releasing these documents now to improve your standing with the president after he said that your intelligence assessments were wrong?
Well, first, I want to correct something that you stated, which was citing the Senate Intelligence Committee's report as being one and the same. I think you said the intelligence community. The Senate Intelligence Committee has a very different function than the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. The evidence and the intelligence that has been declassified and released is irrefutable. I'm going to let Caroline speak to Secretary Rubio.
I'll speak to both questions. First, on Secretary Rubio, he put out a statement in 2020 following that Senate Intelligence Committee report, and he said what they found is troubling. We found irrefutable evidence of Russian meddling, which the Director of National Intelligence just confirmed for all of you, that Russia was trying to sow distrust and chaos. But what's the outrage in this that Secretary Rubio did not say at the time, the Democrats were saying at the time, is the fact that the intelligence community was concocting this narrative that the president colluded with the Russians, that the president's son was holding secret meetings with the Russians, all of these lies that were never true. And he also said at that time, we discovered deeply troubling actions taken by the FBI under Comey, particularly their acceptance and willingness to rely on the Steele dossier without verifying its methodology or sourcing. The Steele dossier that many outlets in this room ran as the gospel truth, and it was cooked up and paid for by the Clinton campaign. As for your second question, Caitlin, I think, who is saying that she would release this to try to boost her standing with the president? Who has said that?
Well, the president has publicly undermined her when it came to Iran. He said she was wrong. He told me that she didn't know what she was talking about. That was on Air Force One on camera.
The only people who are suggesting that the Director of National Intelligence would release evidence to try to boost her standing with the president are the people in this room who constantly try to sow distrust and chaos amongst the president's cabinet, and it is not working. I will just answer your question directly. I am with the President of the United States every day. He has the utmost confidence in Director Gabbard. He always has. He continues to, and that is true of his entire cabinet, who is all working as one team to deliver on the promises this president made. Does anyone else have questions for Director Gabbard? And then we'll turn it over to a couple other questions. Christian, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Director Gabbard. Two follow-ups on questions that have been asked. You mentioned the previous DNIs during the president's first term. One of them reports to you right now, if I'm not mistaken, John Ratcliffe. So have you not spoken to him about why this information was not declassified during the first term?
He was in that position for a very short period of time. The work that began back then, we have picked up and absolutely completed. We are continuing to investigate this. Additional whistleblowers are now coming forward because they see an opportunity for the truth to come to light. And as Caroline said, for real accountability to be brought forward. The accountability is the essential part of this. We can show the truth, reveal the truth. The accountability needs to occur to be able to start to restore that trust in the integrity of our democracy.
And then just quickly, I know you said you would leave the charging to DOJ, but the statute of limitations on conspiracy is 5 years. So what else could they possibly pursue besides treason?
I think that's a great question for Attorney General Pam Bondi. We're providing all of the evidence, all of the intelligence that we have, both redacted and unredacted versions, referring it to the Department of Justice and the FBI.
We'll take one more. Charlie, go ahead.
How credible was the information about Hillary Clinton's health? The report said that it was from sourced from the DNC. Have you seen that information? Or do you think that maybe Russia was overemphasizing what they had?
All I have seen is what the Intelligence Committee have reported through their investigation. I think the underlying point there is that we understand from intelligence what Russia said that they had. And the important point here is that if they were trying to influence the election, as President Obama and James Clapper and John Brennan, everybody said they were doing in order to support Donald Trump's election, they would have released the most damning of that information, some of which I detailed here. You'll find the rest in the report, prior to the election to help Donald Trump win. They specifically withheld what they had on her, the most damning information, because they thought that she would win the election. They had plans to release it just prior to her inauguration to, again, sow discord and chaos in America.
And if I may, on Jeffrey Epstein, can you rule out that he was connected in some way to any kind of intelligence, either foreign or domestic?
I haven't seen any evidence or information that reflects that. If anything comes before me that changes that in any way, support the president's statement loud and clear. If any credible evidence comes forward, he wants the American people to see it.
Great. Director Gabbard, we thank you for your
Thank you.
time today. I know you're a busy woman,
Thank
so
you.
we'll let you get out of here, but thank you so much. Okay. I know there's many issues going on today across the world and here at home. If you have any other further questions, I'm happy to take them. Ed, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. So the Japan trade deal, is that Japan trade deal the start of this number of trade deals that the Treasury Secretary says we're going to see by August 1st?
I think it is. I mean, as you said, we had Japan yesterday. We also had Indonesia, and we had the Philippines as well. The president announcing all three. He came in as the closer in all three of those. I've said many times from this podium that the president's trade team has been in active talks and discussions with many countries around the world, and you've all been anxiously awaiting what those countries were. Now you know three of them, and there's many more to go. We have now sent 25 letters to countries around the world. But just to reiterate this Japan deal, for those at home who may have missed it, Japan will now pay a 15% tariff versus the reciprocal rate of 24% that they initially had. Auto and auto parts tariffs have been reduced to 15%, but the centerpiece of this deal now is the president got Japan to commit to $550 billion in investments to revitalize American industries. And these funds will be spent at President Trump's discretion and direction into key industries such as energy, semiconductors, critical minerals, pharmaceuticals, and shipbuilding. And the U.S. will retain 90% of the profits from any investments made by this $550 billion fund. This was originally a $400 billion investment that President Trump then negotiated to an increase of $150 billion, making it a $550 billion deal for the American people. And I just want to emphasize, Ed, I see you have a follow-up, but it's very important. Japan has agreed to open their markets to many very key sectors in American-made products that have really faced very strict tariff and non-tariff barriers prior. So thanks to the president, Japan's markets will now be open to American-made products and goods. This is big news for our tech companies and our farmers as well.
On Monday, the Treasury Secretary is going to Stockholm to talk to the Chinese delegation. What does the president hope to get out of that meeting? Are there deliverables?
I won't speak to any deliverables or set expectations. I'll let the Secretary of Treasury do that. But I did speak to him yesterday about his upcoming trip, and he looks forward to continuing discussions with his Chinese counterparts. The president has ensured that we have a good continuing working relationship with China that benefits the United States, and so the Secretary of Treasury will be obviously discussing those key matters, but I'll let him set the expectations.
One more, if I may.
Sure.
Given what the DNI just said and laid out, does President Trump believe that President Obama should go to jail for something?
Look, the president believes that this matter needs to be thoroughly investigated, and anyone convicted of crimes should be held accountable in this country. Go ahead. Special Envoy Wickoff is headed overseas again.
Good to see you, Olivia.
Good to see
I haven't
you.
seen you since the campaign trail.
Yeah, it's good to see you. He's headed back overseas. Can you give us a sense of what the marching orders are to some of the people he'll be meeting with, and specifically as it relates to Gaza and ongoing talks there?
Yes, Special Envoy Wickoff is headed to Europe, where he will meet with key leaders from the Middle East to discuss the ongoing ceasefire proposal to end this conflict in Gaza and to release the hostages. These are very sensitive negotiations that are currently taking place. I spoke to Special Envoy Wickoff last night about them. I will let him speak further on the matter, but the President and Special Envoy Wickoff has made the administration's goals clear. We want this ceasefire to happen as soon as possible, and we want these hostages to be released. Go ahead.
Carolyn, a Florida federal judge has refused to allow the Epstein grand jury materials to be released. Does the president want the administration or Department of Justice to appeal that ruling?
That was just breaking as the director and I were coming out here, so I haven't had a chance to talk to the president about it. I understand there are 2 other requests from the Department of Justice that are ongoing, but I'll let this president speak to whether he wants to see an appeal in the Department of Justice. I'm sure can give you a statement on that as well.
And is he supportive of the effort to talk to Ghislaine Maxwell? I know that Todd Blanchard mentioned that earlier this week.
The president spoke to this yesterday, and he said he thinks it's an appropriate idea. Kelly.
What is the accountability that you would like to see if this current president is the one who brought the case to the Supreme Court and Chief Justice Roberts made clear in his opinion that a sitting president's responsibilities in office cannot lead to prosecution, immunity? So what is it the President Trump wants regarding President Obama, given that fact? And the special counsel at the time, Durham, when that Supreme Court matter was not in effect, could have charged anyone and did not. So on those 2 points, how do you respond?
Look, the president has made it clear that he wanted these documents to be declassified. He wanted the American people to see the truth, and now he wants those who perpetuated these lies and this scandal to be held accountable. As for what accountability looks like, as the director said, it's in the Department of Justice's hands, and we trust them to move this ball forward.
Well, you would agree
Stephanie.
President Obama cannot be charged based on that immunity.
Again, I'll leave that to the Department of Justice. Stephanie.
In light of the Japan deal, are sectoral tariffs now up for negotiation with trading partners? And in a similar note, are these negotiators asking for investment funds, sort of like what Japan had agreed to?
As for sectoral tariffs, I understand that the president continues to be in talks with our Secretary of Commerce. We have made commitments on various sectoral tariffs, as you know. The Department of Commerce has initiated studies to then move forward with implementing those sectoral tariffs. So I would defer you to them for further comment. Meredith.
I wanted to ask if the White House has any update on the Commerce Department employee who's been detained or banned from exiting China, and if there are any efforts to get him out.
I can assure you and the American people that the administration is actively monitoring the situation and engaged, but typically we don't comment on individual cases like this as we are sorting them out. Sure.
Yes.
Behind you, Dr. Harper, sorry. Go ahead, to the lady sitting down in the blue, yes.
Thanks,
What's your name? What's your name?
My name is Caroline also. Caroline Boda with the Center Square.
Great.
So Republicans in the Senate today said that they are pulling back on legislation to impose sanctions on Russia after the president said he wants to act unilaterally. Can you elaborate on what the president intends to do?
Look, the president has been in very close communication with his friends in the Senate, particularly Senator Lindsey Graham, on this issue. But the president has always maintained, he's the commander-in-chief and the president for a reason, and he has been deeply involved in this conflict since the beginning. And so any decisions that are made with respect to sanctions, the president wants to reserve that authority and that right to himself. Jasmine.
Thanks, Caroline. 2 questions for you. The first on AI. Does President Trump support federal agencies contracting with Elon Musk's AI company?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, so he would want the DOJ to then cancel the contract with Roth.
I'll talk to him about it, yes.
And my second question, just, obviously the developments with the Epstein case with the judge, but I wonder, has the White House counsel, the DOJ explored any other documents that could be released to the public that don't have to do with that grand jury testimony?
To my knowledge, the Department of Justice has moved forward with the request to unseal that grand jury testimony, and as you know, they have also moved forward with interviewing Ms. Maxwell, which I believe will be taking place very soon. Go ahead. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. I have a question about Paul Ingracia, the OSC nominee who faces a Senate committee hearing tomorrow. Tom Tillis said that he wouldn't vote for Ingracia if a vote came to the Senate floor. 24 worker advocacy groups have said that they don't support his nomination. What is the White House planning to do to sort of turn the tide or convince legislators that they should vote for him?
The White House is always in communication with members of both the Senate and the House, and we stand by the president's nominees. Sure.
In connection with the Mueller investigation, a grand jury indicted 13 Russians. President Putin has said he will never extradite those men. Given the new information that Ms. Gabbard has found, what's the administration's position on that case? Should those charges be dropped?
I don't have an update for you on that case, but I'll check in with the National Security Council, and our team will get you something. Sure.
Thank you so much. So Fannie Willis and Jack Smith separately, they both charged President Trump with conspiracy to defraud the United States and a conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election. And now it turns out we're confirming that Obama and his cronies were doing that the whole time in 2016 on a massive scale, falsifying documents and having their intel agencies do this. What does this say about the 2020 election? And also, what's your thoughts on the irony here?
There is a lot of irony, especially for the party of the Democrat Party, who claims to be for democracy. We often heard throughout the 2024 campaign they were calling this president a threat to democracy. And now I think the declassification of all of these documents proves that they were indeed the true threat to democracy. And as I said repeatedly today, there needs to be justice and accountability for that. You all will hear directly from the president later this afternoon at the AI Summit here in Washington, D.C., scheduled to speak later in a few hours. So we will see you all there. Thank you very much.
All right, so you're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. The White House briefing just wrapping up. So for a majority of that briefing, not only did we hear from Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, but we also heard from Tulsi Gabbard, President Donald Trump's Director of National Intelligence, and she is touting the release of a House report that she claims helps undercut the reality of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. Gabbard, she made a surprise appearance. We don't normally see her at these press briefings, so we could say a surprise appearance at the White House press briefing just hours after she made public a declassified report from House Republicans that was produced during the first Trump administration. So a lot of talk surrounding that. I'm going to go out of order. So in the bottom right, I usually start top, but in the bottom right is a press conference after Brian Kohlberger was sentenced. He was just sentenced today, about an hour ago, to 4 consecutive life sentences for the brutal stabbings of 4 University of Idaho students. Up top, Texas leaders are talking about disaster preparedness. This comes weeks after the July 4th flooding there in the Hill Country in Texas, devastating stuff in Central Texas. So we want to take you, do we want to go to Texas? Yes. Okay, so we want to take you to Texas. Here you go. And again, Texas leaders talking about disaster preparedness, and it comes weeks after that flooding, that devastating flooding there in Texas, in the Hill Country specifically. Let's take a listen in.
Network is operated by AT&T. Have a bandwidth that's available for good communication for emergency services to coordinate.
Out of respect for the families, that's something that you'll have to get from them if they wish to share that with you.
All right, so you're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. That is Texas leaders talking about preparedness. This comes disaster preparedness, as I should say. We wanted to make sure we get the sound right, so it sounded a little hollowy. So here we go. Here it is. This is in Austin, Texas, at the Capitol there. Let's take a listen in. I think we got everything correct.
So if the network is saturated, it'll prioritize our calls over the general population. But if there's no service, there's no service.
I see. And in my last question is for the signal, the sound that goes out, the alert that goes out, amber alert, weather, silver alerts, different alerts. They're all the same, aren't they?
They are.
So I agree with Representative Verdell. People get desensitized to those, and perhaps different sounds, different alarms, breaking them up, dashes, solid sounds, it might help people to recognize one that they would not want to turn off, or something just different, so they're not so desensitized to the same sound.
Senator, I would agree. If a different sound, something they're not used to, maybe they would take the time to look at their phone and actually read it.
Who sets that sound, that tone?
We push it out to the media, and then they push it out. So I'm not really, to tell you the truth, I don't know who would have the authority or ability to change that.
Okay.
But we can definitely look into that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I just have to be able to say that on behalf of my constituents, and that you're very timely, professional, effective, compassionate response to serve our people. An example of how, especially our game wardens and our troopers work seamlessly, and the interoperability is solved. It's an example of what we're talking about. I guess what we would like to have expanded statewide with across the board. Would you agree with that statement?
Absolutely, I would.
So I guess I'm going to ask the same question I asked Chief Nim Kidd, especially to both of the colonels. You haven't done your after-action report yet, or you're working on it. I know you are. Just at the top, but top 2 lessons learned going forward, what would you say those are?
I'll start off. Freeman Martin, Texas DPS. I think the Texas legislature addressed some of these the last session, that September 1st we will have funding for helicopter replacements. The cold case ask that we had last time was partially funded, but a big portion of that has to do with the crime labs and DNA dealing with cold cases. And that's some of the same technology that we're trying to expand. And so they can work cold cases, and then when there's a mass casualty event, they can be diverted, and we can have multiple crime labs doing what UNT does with this mitochondrial DNA. Beyond that, internally, there's always things we can do better. But the identification of these unidentified victims is huge for us. So anything we could do with biometrics and new technology, using the DLS database to be able to search, iris scans or fingerprint technology and stuff like that, those are going to be some of our recommendations to the body.
Colonel Vanderus, what would you say?
Yeah, Ron Vanderus, Colonel, Texas Game Wardens. Senator, to your point, I think, obviously each one of these disasters is a little bit different each time. I know in particular one thing, and Chief Kidd may have talked about it, it kind of circles into the communication, the organized chaos, if you will, initially. I know as one of the first responding agencies with a large group of people, one of the things that became very difficult, and we've seen this in other instances, is you have qualified responders on scene, but you have a gap between who needs the help and where does that help need to get, and how do you get those people to it. And so that's a bridge that needs to be addressed and figured out how when a situation occurs and in the first 10, 12 hours or even sooner, when you get people on scene, how do you get the help to the right people and not waste time? And so, for instance, sometimes the 911 calls would get clogged up, as you mentioned, circled through the systems, and how does that happen? And how does that 911 call get to an overwhelmed first responder group, whether that be a local police department or sheriff's department? It takes time to spin that up, and I think that would be one mechanism I think that would be definitely need to see some improvement on.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, just in following up with the conversation we had about the low water crossings and the technology to be able to warn, I mean, your agency, and especially the locals, but state managed roads that are low water crossings that you know historically will flood with X amount of rainfall. And it doesn't have to be a foot. And let me just give the example recently in San Antonio on Vital Creek is it Loop 410?
Yes, sir.
13 people sitting there to drown there at Vital Creek. That's just an example. This is a precursor to the 4th of July. But those types of crossings exist in low water areas that you know are going to do that. You know Vital Creek's going to do that with 3 inches of rain in San Antonio in the middle of the city. And we're also talking about what happens in our rural areas on roads. So the technology, what do you think you can do? I know you discussed it, but if as you look at into the future to be able to address this, as Representative Johnson was talking about, what would you say would your first 2 responses to be able to address those low water crossings that you know are going to have I mean, it's like we don't put up a stoplight until some people have died at that intersection. How many times have we seen that? Do we need to continue to do that with low water crossings or even intersections? I mean, be proactive to prevent fatalities. So tell us what some of your ideas would be to address.
Yes, sir. I think taking the systems that we do have in hand, making those systems better, expanding our footprint, like you're saying, identifying the highest risk locations, and put some systems in place. I think you're exactly right. That's what we can do.
So we'll have your commitment. You're going to work on that.
We will work on that. Yes, sir.
Ms. Corona, if I can ask you a question about the PUC. So tell us how the PUC coordinated with the electric utilities to restore power to Kerr County residents after the flood.
So our role in the State Operations Center is to ensure that the utility is able to communicate not only just to its needs for restoration, but timeliness to the first responders in the area, and to ensure that any needs that are coming in, say from critical facilities, that type of thing, are appropriately prioritized with the utility for restoration. We had an ongoing dialogue with Kerrville Public Utility Board and with LCRA throughout the event.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no more questions.
Thank you, Senator Flores. Members, we're going to stand at ease on the Senate side. We're going to stand at ease on the Senate side till 2 o'clock. We've got clerks and those folks that are supporting this panel and all that we do. You guys can check email, text message, whatever you need to do. Be back here shortly if you're leaving at 2 o'clock. If you're not, we will stand at ease till 2 o'clock and just let everybody take a real quick break here and get caught up on life and the bathroom breaks and take a quick snack or something. But I appreciate anybody that wants to stay. It's fine. Just we'll be starting back at 2 o'clock sharp.
And the Texas House Select Committee on Disaster Preparedness and Flooding will also stand at ease till 2 o'clock.
Panelists, you're stuck there, up or down, but just be back here at 2 o'clock.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Right there, looks like, are they wrapping up for the day or is this just recess?
I think it's just a break.
Just a break. Okay, they're taking a break. So Texas leaders, a committee actually is speaking on disaster preparedness and flooding at the state capitol in Austin, Texas. They're taking a break right now. They've been meeting for quite some time. Where do we want to go to next, Carlene? We have a couple of things live. We have the press conference after the Kohlberger sentencing there in Boise, Idaho. Also, there is a House hearing on unaccompanied children at the border. That is happening live in D.C. So we have a few things happening live as we speak. Okay, let's go back to Idaho. So we brought you this live on WCNC Plus, the sentencing. Brian Kohlberger, the man who pleaded guilty to the stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students. He will serve life in prison prison. A judge sentencing him this afternoon in a court in Boise, Idaho. This is a press conference, again, about an hour and a half after that sentencing. And after that sentence, rather, was handed down by a judge in Idaho. Let's take a listen in to what's being said at this press conference at the moment.
A case like this in Idaho was matched by an extremely high level of secrecy within the case. The Gonzalez family is under their desperate for answers about what happened to their daughter. Do you anticipate most of the court documents being unsealed, or are there things that you will specifically request remain sealed?
As far as the court documents, Judge Hippler told us that he is going to work with the attorneys to go through every sealed document. Many, probably most of the documents were sealed for the purpose of protecting against tainting the jury pool. And those documents I would expect would become unsealed. Requests for discovery, various things like that. There are also documents in there that contain very personal, private information regarding victims and families. I expect those likely will not be released under Idaho's protections against what the law calls unwarranted invasions of personal privacy. I realize that can be frustrating for folks who want to be able to explore this thoroughly, but we have to balance, and the law balances the privacy of the people who have suffered, including the victims who are dead, with giving the public as much information as we responsibly can.
Alex Duggan, the spokesman review. I'm just wondering, did a lack of knowing the reason or the motive concern you when prepping for trial? Because juries tend to want to explore the motive or reason for a crime. And also, how do you as investigators and attorneys grapple with that? Because if you can't rationalize something irrational, then how do you continue knowing that maybe you won't get an answer?
Well, I'll tell you from an investigator standpoint, we already know and realize we often don't get to know that. We want it. We all do. We naturally want that. But the reality is it's not something that we have to have or that we get. And the reality also is that oftentimes those very things that you're asking about, they're only known to one person. And it's the person that commits those crimes. And I think that's probably what we have here.
And I would add that going through this whole investigation, I'd probably say it's easier than it was for Bill's offices. We were focused on a task. We had a task to do, and it was discovering evidence and interviewing folks and that sort of thing. So the motive necessarily doesn't play a part in that, right? Obviously it can, but we were just focused on getting the job done in the correct way as best we could. So.
And from the prosecutor's point of view, yeah, certainly the lack of a clear motive is something that we think about and consider as we're preparing for trial, because we're going to have a jury of 12, ordinary, honest citizens there who want to figure this thing out. But we also, and I've also found that juries tend to follow the law. And even jurors who come in with strong feelings, they tend to follow the law that the judge gives. And there is no element of motive in Idaho law for murder. And so we set that aside as something that we were going to dwell on. Whether there was clear proof of a specific motive, because we knew it wasn't legally required, and practically speaking, we knew it wasn't something that we possessed, that we could give to the jury without speculating. And I'm sure as heck not going to stand in front of a bunch of 12 jurors and start speculating. We're going to give them the evidence. And the evidence in this case, what you heard at the time of his guilty plea, back on the 2nd, that evidence was compelling, and it showed his guilt without having to worry about motive in a human sense. Thank you for the question. In the back.
Did he say anything when he was arrested?
Yeah, so Brett, myself, and members of the FBI, we traveled back to Pennsylvania. We were there, and I know they hit on it earlier, but I'd be remiss without talking about the cooperation and the support that we had from them was absolutely incredible. From the time that we got on the ground with the Pennsylvania State Police and with the FBI back there, it was unbelievable. Anything that we needed, they were there to facilitate it. So We helped to shape what that looked like, what the arrest looked like, what took place once they hit the house on the search warrant and he was taken into custody. Brett and I were at another location, a barracks of Pennsylvania State Police, and then he was brought to us and we conducted an interview with him that night there in Pennsylvania. So,
Can you talk about what he said?
So we went into this interview, we used a lot of influence and guidance from the FBI and their behavioral analysis unit to help us a ton in framing our interview strategy rather. When we spoke to Mr. Koberger, we kept it pretty surface level to begin with, the idea being get him to speak and keep him speaking. It was pretty surface level, and then when we tried to get into things a bit more detailed, we decided to end the interview. So that's pretty.
As soon as we tried to walk into the purpose of why we're there, which obviously he knows we're detectives from Idaho, so that's when we really started to shut down, and they just shut it down. So.
What was his demeanor?
That's calm, relaxed.
Say very similar to what you see and whenever you see him in court.
Next question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mike Baker from the New York Times. I'm wondering if you can talk about Mr. Koberger's family, whether you got much cooperation, tips, input from them along the way.
The only thing we're really able to talk about is that we didn't get any tips or any evidentiary items from the family. So, is that yeah. Yes.
Just wondering if you ever had any idea of what made Mr. Koberger take a plea deal again?
No.
Can I ask a follow-up? I know there was
That was a short answer. You probably have time for a short follow-up.
Can I also ask a follow-up to the investigators? I know there's some reports that there was Koberger was hired some container out of the house. Did you ever determine what that was?
No, and the belief was in the one of the roommates in her statement, and that's out there, was that she observed something in his hand when she saw him, but we don't know what it was.
You had an expert who was going to testify about him cleaning something off of his work computer, some software experts. Was there any evidence that he had tried to wipe anything from his phone, software-wise? The bar charts, I believe, is
Yeah, and so this kind of goes into the connection to the victims as well. That's a similar question. We had the world's foremost experts on this look into it, and there was evidence that he had used software to wipe many of his devices relatively effectively, so there wasn't much evidence obtained after that.
including I can see it. Did he have two cell phones, or was it just the one cell phone?
I think he had one active phone, but I don't remember, so quote me if he had more at his home
So
office or
it was
somewhere
more
else.
than just the work computer that he had wiped.
Yeah, he regularly used software to try to wipe, clear things off. He used VPN on his devices also.
Hey, back here.
Kevin Fixer with the Idaho Statesman. I'm hoping you can walk us through the decision to hand off the DNA process on the knife sheet over to Offram Labs, who's contracted by ISP, and then ultimately the FBI takes over that IgG process. And then Prosecutor Thompson, I'm curious if you had concerns about constitutional rights issues based on how the FBI conducted themselves in that part.
I'll start and I'll speak briefly to, when we were notified that we had a DNA from the knife sheath, and it was a single source male DNA, touch DNA, then we knew that we had capabilities to take that further. So you're correct, the Idaho State Police has a contract with Offram Laboratories in Texas. So we flew that over there, and they started the process of working that, and what was the beginning of the IgG process. And at some point during it, we were working with the FBI, which we did closely throughout the entire case and every aspect of it. We talked and met with them, and they had further resources and some capabilities that we thought may get us somewhere quicker. And so we made the decision to then shift that to the FBI and continue that process there.
And as to your question about legal concerns, my simple answer is no. I didn't have legal concerns about how the FBI conducted their IgG investigation. I know that was the subject of lengthy, detailed, painfully detailed motions and briefing, and Mr. Nye rose to the occasion and was able to address all of that. But in the end, it's simply no different than sending somebody undercover into any place to gather information. And I was not concerned about the legality of it. And the judge came through and made the right decision. There was no violation of the defendant's rights or anybody else's rights.
Had he not left the knife sheath behind, would you have been able to track him down?
We've talked about this ad nauseum. The answer is yes. Through the car, most likely. We had some amazing people going truly line by line over tens of thousands of white Hyundai Elantras. So we believe we would have got to it through that avenue. The time frame for that is uncertain. It could have been a week later. It could have been 2 months later. We just don't know. We would have found it. We would have found it.
There's a lot of questions in regards to that initial window. Brett and I made the decision on what that window was, even though the experts were saying there may be more years that match it. But the simple numbers that we began to look at were astronomical, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of these vehicles. So we chose to try to narrow it and start smaller, and then as we had to, we were going to open that up. But we both believe we would have gotten him to the car eventually.
A question for Mr. Thompson. Amanda Rowley, with regard to it appears that the plea deal, it felt a bit rushed. So the question is, why did it happen so quickly, considering some of the families were against it? And also, the Mogan family at the plea hearing mentioned saying that this is the best possible outcome. I'm just wondering, do you agree with that, or would you like to see a different outcome?
Well, I think we agree with the Mogan family. Our decision was that this is the best possible outcome, all things considered, and factoring into that, the defendant was prepared to plead guilty as charged. Now, if that hadn't been a factor, we'd be picking a jury for trial starting right now, or starting this week. What was the first part?
Why was this such a quick? It felt rushed. So why did this happen so quickly in the family?
Now, I hear you. The process moved quickly. There's no doubt about it. And like I outlined for the court earlier today, things changed dynamically the week following the June 18th hearings on the defense motion for a continuance and the alternate perpetrator motion, where Judge Hippler made it very clear that the defense was not going to prevail on either of those. And so the reality of trial was there, and there was nothing else in its way. We were continuing for trial. We've been doing that for months. And as I mentioned, that's we were bringing Mr. Hurwitz in to help us because the Attorney General's office was not able, with the manpower, to help us all the way through trial. We were ready to go. When we were approached by the defense about the possibility to plea, our first question was, is your client prepared to plead guilty? And it took them a little while to give us that answer. In the meantime, we reached out to the families. And we talked to the families, and we solicited their input, and we considered that in making our decision. The fact of the matter is, I think Judge Hippler commented on this back on July 2nd when we were in court, is that the logistics of the upcoming trial, with 10,000 prospective jurors being summoned in, the court staff making arrangements and preparing to process that part of the case, dictated that if the case was going to resolve, it needed to resolve quickly. And so that kind of drove the pace over that weekend, the last weekend of June. At the end of the weekend, when we understood from the defense that the defendant was prepared to plead guilty, the court was notified the next morning, and the court wanted to move quickly to get a plea done on the record if it was going to be done, and if it wasn't, so we were not interrupted in our trial preparations.
So trial logistics were the main concern, just as Judge Hippler had said prior, right, with the jury as a factor.
Yeah, the practical aspect is that the trial machine was running, and if it was going to be interrupted, that had to be known as soon as possible. I think that's the fairest explanation.
Any question here?
with Michelle Benucci for 48 Hours. I just had a question about when you were looking at the co-burger's past. Was there any early sign of trouble, or what did his background look like?
Well, we can't go into his younger years. I believe that's actually still under seal. Correct me if I'm wrong. But what I can tell you is the things we do know about him was that his education led him down a path that was very much focused on forensics, crime scenes, that sort of thing. So that was really what we focused on in his background, is what led him down this path. How may he have prepared for this? And I think that was a big component of that, was just his schooling and his choice of potential future profession. So.
And just so there's no speculation here by what Detective Payne just said, documents under seal involving Mr. Kohberger's background, they may or may not be released down the road. I can tell you that there is no evidence of any criminal history of any significant nature. There was no evidence of a history of violence. There was no evidence of a history of a factual predisposition to do the crimes that he committed here. So if there are any concerns among your listeners or readers that somehow he was a serial killer in waiting with all these prior actions, we are not aware of any behaviors like that that preceded what happened here in Idaho.
We'll take this question here, and then we're going to have two more after that.
Yeah, Amanda Harding with CBS News. This question is for Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson, you talked about being in the victim's families. Before the plea deal was reached, including the Gonzalez's, have you spoken to the Gonzalez's afterward about their displeasure with this? And if so, what's that conversation?
We have spoken with families afterwards, and I can tell you that families that did not agree with our decision have made that very clear to us. And I don't expect anything different. I respect, and we respect, that everyone is going to grieve differently, even within family units. And everyone is going to look at the case and possible resolutions from their own light, and they are entitled to that as victims. I'm not going to pretend that everybody was just fine with our decision, because there were families and family members who were not. And we accept that, we recognize that. It's just a fact of life.
More questions?
It was stated earlier that the target is unknown. However, it's been speculated that the convicted may have encountered Maddie while she was serving at the Mag Creek restaurant due to the vegan menu options. When his digital data was analyzed, were there any location pins or any information there that could have connected him to where Maddie worked?
No, there wasn't. Like I said earlier, we wanted that. We looked for it in every possible way, digitally, financially, physical location, anything you could think of, anything that we thought, where's the connection, where's the overlap, and we searched tirelessly and
So
never
he never
found
was
it.
at that restaurant?
I can't say that he was never there at all, but we never found any evidence at all from interviewing everybody that we possibly could, talking to every person that would have that information to be able to show that he was there, or that there was a connection through the restaurant.
Take the last question here.
Okay, just two follow-ups to earlier questions, if that's okay, so I can make sure we're understanding everybody correctly. First of all, Mike's question about the family. You said that you didn't get any evidence from the family. Was there any hindrance in the investigation from the family? And was there any specific evidence you were hoping to get?
Are you talking about his family, Kohberger's?
Yes.
There was not any hindrance, anything, nothing that impacted us carrying out the investigation.
Okay, thank you. And then the second follow-up, when you mentioned, like, obviously you follow this line of interest in his studies, did anything in your investigation indicate that that was chosen as part of a planning process as opposed to just an area of interest?
There was nothing aside from, we have some of his coursework where he did, crime scene recreation, that sort of thing, but it was all part of his studies. So I don't think that any of us attributed that to a planning process per se. Certainly it was a learning process, but whether or not it was a planning process ahead of what he did, we'll probably never know that.
Yeah, and I would say we didn't find anything that would be any different than a student similar, a different student in a PhD program.
Gotcha, so then I'm understanding that the planning process, if your investigation turned up, if it was part of the plan, was maybe that purchase of the AR-9 on Amazon would have been the first, I guess, step toward.
Did you plan it? Did you buy it with the purpose of that? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
And we don't
have anything to show or prove that we did that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all. That concludes our Q&A section today. Hopefully we tried to get as many of you folks' questions answered as possible. I'm sure you're going to have further questions, and certainly the question was already brought up about public records requests. Just keep in mind that if you're looking for those in the future, you will need to go to each individual agency or entity that has the keepers of those records. So just to reiterate, the website that City of Moscow is going to be putting up hopefully today, that will only be Moscow Police Department records, and those will be police reports. So we understand that this case has captured the attention of literally the world, and today's news conference was not held to relive the tragedy, but to honor those lives that were lost, to acknowledge the conclusion of this legal process and to reinforce our wavering commitment to justice, a commitment we share with you. I want to take a moment to thank the members of the media here today. We understand that you do have a vital role in helping the public comprehend the intricacies of this case, and your continued professionalism in covering this emotionally charged and complex case is appreciated. No additional comments from law enforcement will be made today, and if you have further questions, please feel free to submit those through the agency's public information officers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, folks, so there you hear it. Some comments from officials following the sentencing of Brian Kohberger. As you just heard over the last several moments here, he's been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This is basically 4 consecutive life sentences. It's essentially for those 2022 fatal stabbings of the University of Idaho students. As we get more information and any more developments throughout the rest of the afternoon and evening, we'll certainly bring them to you here on Live Impact News. Meantime, I want to say hi, folks. I'm Vanessa Rivas. I am taking over for Nick Sturdivant. We'll be together for the next 50 minutes or so until we get to our 4 o'clock newscasts here on WCNC+. First of all, just wanted to check in with the weather because we know it's been a bit rocky on the heat front lately. We've had some weather alerts. We're looking pretty good today. If you went outside, you probably weren't, wow, what a delight, what a change. But that's not to say we're in the clear quite yet, because come the end of the week, we're still looking at the possibility of some dangerous heat over the weekend. So let's look at our latest forecast courtesy of our Weather Impact team.
Well, good Wednesday afternoon to you. I'm WCNC meteorologist. Majestic storm. It is absolutely beautiful outside. We are getting spoiled with another sunny day, and temperatures today, yes, they're going to be hot, but let me just say, you'll want to take advantage of the more bearable, kind of comfortable forecast today before the weekend hits, because we are preparing you for a stretch of high humidity and heat. So if you're heading out to the pool or maybe the lake, maybe the golf course, I say absolutely do it. It is going to be beautiful. Plenty of sunshine, temperatures rising into the lower end of the 90s. But here's the catch. We're not dealing with a whole lot of humidity today, so our air temperature truly is what it's going to feel like as you're heading out the door. We've had 16 days in a row now where our air temperatures have at least hit 90 degrees. 16, and today, oh, you better believe it, we're forecasting even hotter temperatures. Yesterday we topped off at 90 degrees, so we were really close to not meeting that 90-degree mark, but we did. And today we're forecasting 92 under sunny skies. It's going to be a warm summer day. So whether you are heading out to the pool with your kids or you want to do some yard work, today's going to be a pretty nice, enjoyable day because it's not too hot, it's not too humid, and compared to what's coming our way, I'd say you might want to take the forecast today. 91 degrees as we're heading into that 5 o'clock time frame. Sunny skies, so even if you want to find a patio, go have some lunch or dinner out on it, it, I say do it. Mid-70s today up in the mountains. Temperatures, of course, a little bit cooler, a little bit more cloud coverage as well, and a small chance for a random pop-up shower or storm. I think we can't rule it out if you're in the mountain locations. Blowing Rock 76 degrees, and then as we head towards the foothills, mainly seeing a mix of those mid to upper 80s. 88 degrees today there in Morganton. 90 out towards Lincolnton, Gastonia, and Charlotte, about 92 degrees, much the same for our good friends out in Shelby. And again, because we don't have really high humidity, it's actually going to feel like these temperatures. You know, when we have high humidity, sometimes it feels a few degrees warmer. I just don't think that's going to be the case today. 92 in Rock Hill, 93 in Chester. Bottom line, though, I'm not saying today is a cool day, but compared to what's coming our direction, it's not too bad. By tomorrow, 93 is where we'll top off, and then those temperatures, they keep on getting hotter. By Saturday, 99 degrees. That's our actual air temperature, almost 100 degrees. 98 on Sunday, Monday 98 as well. So these 3 days, you got to stay close to our weather team because we have multiple WCNC weather alert days in a row, and we issue these when the weather could be dangerous, when you really need to pay close attention to the forecast. So today, still feeling like we're around those low to mid 90s, a little hotter tomorrow, but by Saturday and Sunday, it's going to feel like we're at 106 degrees. So very dangerous, especially if you don't have air conditioning. Make sure you are, putting together a game plan, making sure you do have a way to stay cool because it stays hot during the day and we struggle to cool throughout the overnight hours. If you're making those weekend plans, hopefully you have a nice way to stay cool. Upper 90s for forecasted highs. So because of that, again, we have multiple alert days in a row. You're going to find a way to stay cool. You're going to need to do that between 1 o'clock in the afternoon and 6 o'clock at night because it's going to feel like we're above 105 degrees. Little to no rain over the next 7 days. And again, our futurecast is just indicating that we could have a pop-up shower or storm as we're heading through our Thursday and Friday. Only about a 20% chance, but you know how it goes. Those isolated storms, they can get a little tricky where all of a sudden it's sunny and gorgeous and then one of those storms will form and you have a brief heavy downpour. Watch for that. And then Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, it's going to be all about that dangerous heat and humidity. Hope you have a great Wednesday.
All right, folks, so there you have it. More updates on the weather to come, of course, as we get closer towards the weekend. Make sure that we're keeping our minds on the track that we're going to be thinking about heat and how to prepare for that and how to stay safe. Want to get to some breaking news right now. NBC News is reporting an update here in the request to unseal some of the Epstein files. If you've been following the saga here, President Trump has been facing some pushback from even within his own party, some folks who want to see more about convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and his case. And so several days back, the president, feeling those calls from not only folks within his party, but also outside, directed Attorney General Pam Bondi to ask the courts if they could release some files, specifically grand jury transcripts related to the Jeffrey Epstein case. We just learned here just a few moments ago, a federal judge in Florida has just ruled that, in their words, their hands are tied in trying to release these federal grand jury transcripts. This was from 2005 and 2007 regarding that investigation into Epstein. Now, it is important to note that this is a different ruling than a DOJ request that is still pending related to the grand jury in the Southern District of New York. That is where Epstein was ultimately indicted. So this is still an ongoing push, but as far as the Florida case is concerned, that district judge said that even though the government believes there are special circumstances here and policy reasons that might have expired at this point to keep the grand jury documents secret, there are no exceptions, their words, no exceptions to grand jury secrecy. Further statement saying that the government has effectively conceded that the court's hands are tied because of the 11th Circuit law. If we get more on this, certainly we'll bring that to you here on Live Impact News. We'll get a bit closer to home here and talk about how various entities, if you will, in our area, organizations, agencies, and in this case, school districts, are trying to pivot now with some uncertainty and potential loss of federal funding. Our Julie Kay has been looking into specifically what CMS is going to do because, Julie, we've been reporting for the last several days, this could be millions and millions of dollars that the district won't get. And so now they have to go figure out what they're going to do and how they're going to fund things, right?
Yeah, and that's a really difficult thing to do, especially because CMS is seeing the biggest funding cut or funding freeze out of any district in the entire state. That's, of course, because it's a large district, but that doesn't mean the impacts are any smaller. It's $12.5 million. So I just went to a press briefing with multiple people on school leadership, including the chief financial officer, who really answered some of our questions about how did we make these decisions. We got that memo yesterday saying, okay, we're going to be okay for this school year. This is what we're doing. Next school year is really what we're concerned about. They had some carryover funding from last year that, typically would get spent, they say, on like supplemental things that don't necessarily, they say, affect the student experience, which is really what we're trying to avoid, is harming any students and their learning experience in the process. But they used that and they kind of redistributed some funds to what they see as more essential needs. That way, they say this year, hopefully no students will feel the impacts of the cuts. Next year, however, is probably going to be a different story, assuming these funds aren't unfrozen.
Now, I guess folks might be wondering, why is this funding frozen? And it's been, tough to keep up with, I guess, over the last several weeks, about all the different policy changes that are coming from federal level and how that is trickling down. And so are you able to pinpoint specifically, what is bringing this federal funding freeze about?
And this is kind of a part of, I know we've seen like wide swaths of cuts across the board. This is another instance, we assume, of the government trying to cut wasteful spending, they say. What's tricky about this particular situation is that there wasn't really a lot of information put out there about why. In fact, the school district, pretty much any entity I've talked to that's impacted other than the state itself, was not notified that they weren't getting the grants. It's just that the grants simply were not renewed, and this was the night before. But a lot of the people affected, the organizations affected, did not get notified, and so it is hard to pinpoint an exact reason for this. Now, we do know some specifics about what was cut. It wasn't just, schools overall. It's specific programs here in North Carolina that would be $165 million across the state in different districts and different programs. Specifically, we've talked a lot about after-school programs. We've talked a lot about kind of teacher enrichment and those types of programs. Also, English as a second language. Language learners are going to be feeling the effects of this across the state and across the country, not just at CMS, really, much more impactfully than others will.
What is the sentiment, from folks that you're speaking with for your report coming up later this evening?
Mm-hmm.
How are they feeling? Are they really nervous about this? Is this something they feel like maybe we can get a handle on this eventually? What are they telling you?
I think people, and it depends on who you talk to, of course, are somewhat hopeful that this lawsuit from Attorney General Jeff Jackson and other attorney generals across the country, he joins 24 others, so half the states, will be successful. Now, I was at a press briefing at a school yesterday in Gastonia with the Attorney General, and he said he's hopeful because of the expedited speed put on something of this scale. They'll get a hearing on this case within weeks as opposed to months. Now, they still won't get an answer by the beginning of the school year. We're kind of past that at this point. We're weeks away from the school year starting. But it seems like for a lot of districts, for CMS especially, they're saying, okay, we're going to be okay this year because we kind of knew something like this might happen. But next year is really the problem. And so I think they're hopeful that they don't have to deal with that yet, but I know that they are looking at options for, hey, that's going to be a lot more difficult. We're also looking at here in Mecklenburg County, dealing with some budget shortfalls as a whole. Statewide at the same time, you think about the state is dealing with Helene, the county is dealing with COVID funds no longer being available or those running out. So there's other external factors also going on. That means a lot of this funding that we may need to replenish in other ways if this isn't unfrozen, there aren't really those pockets to pull from. So I think they're hopeful that this lawsuit will move swiftly and in their favor, but I do think there is just kind of a general tone of concern for what next year will look like.
Yeah. When can folks see your report today?
I'll be on at 6.
All right. We'll see you then. Julie, if we could, just sit tight here, because you might want to weigh in on the next story. I know you were working on CMS today, and you were not specifically working on this story, but we've just received multiple reporting at this time regarding former North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper. Apparently expected to announce his campaign for North Carolina Senate. This is according to, now, like we said, multiple reports. We've got Axios reporting this, Politico as well. According to the Politico report, 2 people directly familiar with the former governor's decision says this announcement could come as soon as Monday. And there's been a lot of talk about, actually for a while at this point, about the potential of Roy Cooper entering this race. And, another twist here was the fact that we learned in recent weeks that the incumbent Republican Senator Tom Tillis decided and announced here that he's not going to be seeking re-election. So, this is definitely a race that's going to be a high-profile one. A lot of eyeballs, probably a lot of money.
Yeah.
Julie, I know that you've covered some of the Tillis stuff, that we've reported on recently. What can you say or share about like the storylines that we're watching here in general?
This is going to be, I'm not surprised to hear that former Governor Cooper is allegedly going to get in on this race. It's something we've been talking about for a while. I am curious to see how that campaign, if it's announced, will be focused. This will be an interesting run in particular because Tom Tillis, as you mentioned, is stepping down. He is one of a few senators who has more publicly challenged the Trump administration, of course, after he announced he was no longer running. But I do think it's going to be interesting because we do have potentially Laura Trump getting in on this race. And so I think we were not just expecting Cooper to do this because, there had just been that concept floated. He was obviously a very popular governor for the most part, as far as that can go in a swing state like this. But to have, you mentioned money being thrown around, to have potentially a Trump in this race as well, you got to have a big name. Otherwise, right now, I know we have Wiley Nickel in the race. He's another Democrat. He had been talking about this campaign for a while. He was the first to announce his candidacy. He, of course, a former U.S. congressman who did not run for re-election because his district was gerrymandered, and he said, there's really no point in me running. This district is no longer going to go my way. So a couple interesting, loud voices in the mix that I think will make this race particularly interesting. But once we get that Cooper nomination official or candidacy official, it'll be interesting to see what we hear from Laura Trump.
Yeah. Definitely. We've talked about the fact too, and even have done reporting on, eligibility here with her.
Yes.
She's a Wilmington native, so she is originally from North Carolina, but does not currently live in North Carolina. And there's actually a deadline, I believe, that she would have to move back here to the Tar Heel state to be able to run if she wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do believe that time is ticking. I think September is the time she'd have to have some sort of address here. Whether or not that means she lives here full time is up for debate, but she'd have to have some form of residency here very, very soon, if that is the case. So I'll be interested to see what happens. We haven't heard either way on that side, but it sounds like that would be a very popular choice for the Republicans here in North Carolina. If that happens, this is going to be a very interesting state to watch. Of course, Tom Tillis, as I mentioned, a Republican, but this is seen kind of nationwide as one of those flippable seats. Throwing a former governor and a Trump into this race makes it for something of nationwide, I think, interest.
Yeah, certainly I would see, you mentioned the term flippable. That Democrats would probably be salivating over the possibility of flipping this seat. And folks have, who are in the political circles have spoken highly of Governor Cooper. We've heard in some ways about his ability to kind of work in a purple state, if you will, across the aisle. So, I can see how Democrats could potentially be like, yeah, this is our guy. If he does announce, once again, this is, it hasn't officially been, it's not official yet. Julie, thank you.
Yes,
I know we had to do a quick pivot there, but literally this second report came down, as you were talking about the CMS situation. So we'll definitely keep folks updated here on Live Impact News. If you learn anything else too on that front, Julie, feel free to come back. And with that, folks, we do actually have another breaking news story that we're following. This is coming to us out of Ohio. We're getting some feeds in and also some continuous coverage, I believe, from our affiliate out there, WKYC. And this is officer-involved shooting. This is in Lorain, Ohio. So I'm trying to pull up here, just outside of Cleveland. It looks like it's going to be just to the west of Cleveland. One suspect is dead here, 3 officers injured. Let's listen in here.
Good afternoon. I'm Russ Mitchell from the WKYC studios. We are breaking into programming to tell you about a breaking story at this hour. 3 Lorain police officers have been shot. This happened between 1 and 2 o'clock this afternoon. We have a map now to show you where this happened. It was this afternoon on Colorado Avenue between Missouri Avenue and Henderson Drive. So no map as of now. We do know those officers have been taken to Metro. Details are sketchy at this moment, as you can imagine. However, we have reporters on the scene to bring us the latest. Annabelle Childers begins with us now. She is at the scene in Lorain. Annabelle, what can you tell us?
Well, Russ, I want you to understand just how massive of a scene this is. We are hearing helicopters overhead. We are here on Colorado Avenue where traffic has been blocked off. But if you look behind me, you can see all of these first responder vehicles, law enforcement agencies are stationed on Missouri Avenue. Now, Missouri Avenue dead ends past where all of these law enforcement vehicles are right now. We believe they might be searching for additional. But according to Lorain's mayor, it's really unclear how many people are involved in this situation. We've been seeing SWAT vehicles arrive on scene. Then we've seen some vehicles turn their lights on and go back to different areas while a lot of onlookers are looking. Now, something we just learned a few minutes ago is, if our photographer Randy will pan off to this building, that is Horizon Summer Camp, where we have been told they have gone into lockdown. There are 60 kids in there. They are being held there until they get the all clear that everything has been wrapped up, but definitely a tense situation. And as you said, with those details being sketchy, we are still really trying to learn more information about how many people are involved and how many suspects potentially could still be at large. Russ.
Annabelle, just to ease the concerns of any parents out there, again, kids at those summer camp, that summer camp there, the room is, the building is locked down, but as far as we know, everybody there is okay.
Yes, absolutely. They are okay. They did this out of an abundance of caution. They've shut down the keypads. They're just really wanting to make sure people are safe.
Okay, Annabelle Childers in Lorain, thank you very much. We want to go now to Lindsay Buckingham, who's at Metro Hospital, where we understand the officers are currently being treated. Lindsay, what can you tell us?
Hi, Russ. Well, we got here about 2 p.m. and we started to hear those sirens come by. I'm going to show you what we're talking about. There is a bunch of Cleveland police officers lined up right there. They started showing up one by one, and then we started to hear those medical choppers overhead, then more police cars. They started to clear a path there in front of the emergency room. Now, we have not confirmed any of the officers were flown here, but Metro did confirm 2 officers were taken here for treatment, along with 1 suspect. Cleveland police also confirmed they helped shut down some of I-90 while the situation was unfolding. Again, Metro confirming 2 officers were sent here for treatment, along with 1 suspect. No word on any of their conditions, but of course, Russ will keep you posted as we get more information.
Okay, Lindsay Buckingham at Metro Hospital, thank you very much. Just to recap now, it's 3:16 on this Wednesday afternoon. 3 Lorain police officers have been shot. We're not sure. We believe they have been taken to Metro Hospital. The scene there in Lorain is chaotic at this moment. The one thing we can tell you, there are kids at a summer camp there, the Horizon Summer Camp, that are on lockdown in their building, but we're told everything's okay. Also, I-90 for a time in Avon was closed. That is reopened. So as you can see, a very hectic situation out there. A lot of police officers involved, as there are every time there's something like this happens. And we will bring you the latest as it becomes available this afternoon. We go on the air for our regular newscast in about 20 minutes. But of course, when news breaks out, we'll break in. The latest also on WKYC.com. For now, I'm Russ Mitchell of the WKYC studios. We'll see you soon.
And as always, we'll bring folks the very latest here on Live Impact News if we get more information out of Ohio. All right, folks, we've been talking about this all week. We've got Panthers training camp. We're going to pivot to that, talk a bit more on this lighter topic, which I think we all need right now. And I think there's still a lot of excitement here for the upcoming season. We got our Danielle Stein, who's joining us from Bank of America Stadium. So we know that the reporting process, veterans, rookies, already happened earlier this week. Today starts training camp. How are things going?
First day of camp in the books. As you just mentioned, everyone who was expected to be there was there and practicing. No pads yet, of course. It's just people in their jerseys so far, getting acclimated to being back out on the field together. But I would say the vibes were genuinely very high. Dave Canales spoke after about just how optimistic he is, which is good to hear, obviously, from your head coach. A little bit of a contrast in terms of what we heard from GM Dan Morgan yesterday, who was afraid to use the P word, playoffs that is, but he said that he thinks that every team in the league should be afraid of facing them this year.
And I think that the sky's the limit for this group. You know, I think that this is going to be a very competitive team. I don't think people are going to want to play us by the style of football that we play. I'm expecting that. My expectations are really high for this group. They are every year, you know, and we're going to shoot for as good as we can get. My language to the group is I want to make sure we maximize the talent in this room. That'll take us as far as we need to go, but that's going to be our focus.
I love that spiciness, Danielle. He feels like people are not going to want to play us. I love that. Okay.
Spicy is a good word. It's actually a word that Nick Carboni used earlier too when describing that comment. But it is nice to hear him have a little bit of that energy even on day one.
Indeed. And I mean, really, it does feel like optimism over Bryce Young, you know, coming off the end of last season is fueling a lot of this. And I mean, presumably just having some more pieces around him too. I know everyone kind of starts off optimistic, you know, to start the season, every single team, but I mean, how are you feeling? Do you feel like the vibe is going to carry everyone through here?
Yeah, I mean, talking about that optimism, I was actually just on social media and I just saw Ocho Cinco posting on X saying that the Panthers might have one of the best trios of wide receivers, that trio presumably being Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette, and their newest rookie, Tetaroa McMillan. So there's talk nationally that this team could be making waves in a way that they haven't in some time, and that, of course, is all starting through Bryce, who, as they acknowledge, yes, last year is last year, and he did start to turn it on towards the end, but there is that feeling that each year he's taking another step, and that does start with his leadership too. He spoke a lot about how he's feeling more comfortable in that role, and a lot of the guys are seeing him as that leader of this team. So getting those relationships early on with those guys on the receiving core as well as the rest of the offense is a really good thing. The receivers, including Bryce, also went over to Minnesota during this offseason, and they were starting to build that rapport too, getting some reps in. Jimmy Horn Jr., another rookie, also part of that group who traveled out, getting some extra work with Bryce before training camp even began. So it's really good to see that these connections are starting to forge, and that only helps to bring out more of that optimism.
I mean, not to mix up sports here, but maybe this is a good, you know, spot for Charlotte. I'm just thinking about the Hornets with the Summer League champs. You know, we're doing it. I think it's happening. This is going to be, you know, our time, Danielle.
I think the thread that we're seeing, though, across both of these teams, like you're mentioning, though, is really exciting young talent that are joining these Charlotte teams. We're talking about Con Knippel, Liam McNeely on the other side, seeing them coming away with that Summer League like you were just talking about. And then you see a guy like T-Mac, who was the 8th pick in this draft not too long ago, too. There is palpable excitement about these guys. And something else that's a thread between the two is they're also high character people that they're also looking at. It's not they're just looking at talent, they're looking at guys who are going to be culturally benefiting both of these teams. So I think that also talks about the upward trajectory for both of these Charlotte teams as well.
It's definitely fun to watch for sure. So Danielle, let's talk a bit about your reporting to come, because we know that you all will be putting together some reports for us for our evening newscast. When can we see you, and what sort of you know, features will you be bringing us?
Yeah, so coming up just at 4 first, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the defense, because we tread a little bit lighter when we talk about them, as they are coming off of a historically poor season last year. But J.C. Horn spoke after practice today at training camp and said, yeah, he's a trash talker, but he knows that they have to kind of back up their talk with action. So they're really looking forward to taking that step forward and kind of proving people wrong. But then later tonight at 6, I re-caught up with left tackle Ike Ekwonu. I talked to him during minicamp, and we talked a little bit more, and I learned some interesting things about his regimen in terms of exercise this off season, and it's pretty fun to hear what he has to say.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. All right. Danielle, thank you so much. We will see you in just a little
thank you.
bit. I know 4 o'clock news is coming up soon. And folks, don't forget here, we'll remind you that Danielle and our Nick Carboni are going to be bringing us continuous coverage throughout Panthers training camp. So keep it here on WCNC Plus. We've been getting reports, morning, afternoon, evening. So we'll be checking in pretty frequently. With that, folks, we want to turn to a new live feed. We are looking live right now at the nation's capital. We've got some lawmakers and officials speaking on some concerns they have with voting rights. Let's go ahead and listen in to see what their messaging is.
For the Democrats, it is a new day. And I am looking forward to making sure that we can respond in kind if they want to play, because we already know that our lines are already jacked up. I already gave you the numbers. You can play with them more if you want to. But just know I'm going to spend every waking day until now, between now and November, to make sure that not only these new seats that you try to draw, if that's what you try to do, that we win those seats, but maybe it's time for us to take some other seats that are sitting up here right now, because they're not doing their jobs anyway. So just know I will not rest, because this is not what democracy looks like, but we're going to show you what it looks like. Thank you.
All right. Jasmine, thank you very much, and thank you to each and every one of the members. They did just call votes, so we'll take a couple of questions and then we have to leave. Please, when you're called upon, let us know who you represent, and please keep your questions brief.
Leah Rudenberg with Grace Television. Two of your colleagues talked about mid-decade redistricting in California or other places. Do you share support for that? Do you get the sense that Democratic leadership would support that?
I mean, I think just like Jasmine just said, I'm not a big fan of mid-decade redistricting, but what Trump is doing is unfair and is discriminatory against black and brown and Asian voters in the state of Texas. And so if you have to match Trump's energy, you can't just roll over and be like, you do whatever you want and we're just going to follow the rule of law. You have to match his energy. And so if that's what he's bringing to the table, then that's what we're going to bring to the table.
Amen. Yep.
Questions for Representative Crockett. Can you reveal a little bit about what you're hearing about what the Democrats may do to counter this? You referred to it, and I know you don't know what everybody else is doing, but can you talk a little bit about how the Democratic Party might counter this version of this?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of strategies that can be employed. Obviously, I came from the State House. Julie and I were both there. We ultimately broke quorum over something that was even smaller than this. I mean, obviously, it was a very big deal. And one of the things that I did not iterate in my comments is that we've talked a lot about how, we all know that everything's bigger in Texas, but I want to be clear that this is bigger than Texas, all right? And one of the things that we did not talk about is the fact that whoever is the speaker, which it needs to be Hakeem Jeffries, that is who's going to have to certify the election. Remember, they're talking about a third term. So this is bigger than Texas. This is why I am asking if there are other governors that are willing to do this, because this is about our democracy. This isn't about any singular seat right here, because we don't own these seats anyway. These seats belong to the people. But when we think about the fact that they are openly saying, oh yeah, there's ways to have a third term, well, let me tell you, they can nominate whoever they want to with the Republican rules, but we're going to follow the Constitution up in here if we are the ones that actually have the gavels. So this is one of the reasons that I am asking for everybody to use whatever tools they have in their toolbox. It was the House that broke quorum when we were in the State House, but obviously the Senate, they could also break quorum. We know that they did that back in 2003 in the state of Texas. We also know that there are donors that I'm sure are going to be willing to make sure that they are investing and making sure that they can take down some of these candidates, since they don't want to rule out dark money. I'm sure some dark money gonna pour in on the behalf of the American people. So what I am saying is every tactic, as well as making sure we're touching people. I will spend a lot of time in the state of Texas. I have traveled this country, but I am going to be boots on the ground informing Texans, because listen to this. When we had our Senate election against that one senator that I'm not a fan of, Cruz, Beto lost by 3 points. But in that particular election, we only had a 17% voter turnout. We only need to turn out people in Texas. That is why they are so pressed to suppress their votes. So if we turn out, imagine what it looks like if 25% of registered voters turn out. So let me be clear. Just like on his little birthday, He had his bootleg parade that cost the American people close to $50 million for free. More people showed up around this country to protest him. We are going to do the same things. We're going to hit them poles and we're going to hit them hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen. We'll take one more.
There's some reporting that one of the reasons they're doing this is to actually carve out more Latino votes because the Latino vote shifted somewhat to the right. Is there any sense that, from your perspective, that that's accurate, that the Latino vote has shifted, and that
Where did
if they
Vicente?
carve out, that would benefit? They both went to
I was gonna let Vicente because I know that covers his district, but no, I think that's I think that's crazy. I think what they are trying to do is actually suppress Black and brown and Asian voices. That's what they've done the last 2 to 3 redistrictings, and that's what they're continuing to try to do now, plain and simple. All that other stuff is just a bunch of nonsense. We have to go because we have to go and vote, but I'm asking everyone from around the state of Texas to go, and I'm going to let Jasmine close us out here, to come to these hearings, show up to these hearings around the state. Houston, there's one in Arlington, Texas, and there's another one, I believe, in Austin. We need for people to show up. We need for activists to be there, Democratic elected officials to be there, and let their displeasure be unknown that we are not going to stand for Donald Trump's discrimination in the redrawing of these maps. Jasmine?
I was just going to add, I had not heard that that is the goal. I will tell you, though, that the state of Texas has always been found to be intentionally racially discriminatory every single time they go through redistricting. So I don't anticipate that we will see anything different. Ever since we've had a Voting Rights Act, federal courts have consistently ruled in that way about Texas. As it relates to a shift, I do know that they believe that there was a shift in this last election, but the reality is that Democrats lost. We stayed at home. That's what truly happened. In addition to that, it is my understanding that the tariffs are hitting our state really hard. Texas is one of the largest trading states in the country. So his tariffs are hitting us a little bit deeper. That's number one. Number two, when it comes to the raids that have taken place, there were those that believe, yes, we need raids, we need to get rid of bad people because that's what he said, but that's not who he's going after. So the Latinos in our state are not very happy with the execution of his immigration policies. So ultimately, do I believe that there is some shift within the Latino community, specifically in Texas, is going to help him out? No. Maybe down in Florida, but that's not who we are as Texans. So I think we are going to stand strong and we are going to push back, fight back, and we are going to deliver wins that they have never seen. We are going to beat this administration.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, folks, so you heard lawmakers speaking there at the nation's capital. Looks like we're mostly pretty much just heard from Texas-based lawmakers, and this is regarding what is a controversial redistricting proposal that Republicans have put forward for Texas, and Democrats, as you heard there, say that they plan to fight back against this. You can see in our 3 box, we're watching a few other feeds. Sorry, folks, we just had that briefing turned over. So we're going to turn now to Ohio. It looks like we might have either a witness or somebody who is nearby speaking on this officer-involved shooting out of Lorain, Ohio. Once again, as we mentioned, 3 officers shot and hurt. The suspect is dead. Let's listen in right now.
For me, it makes me just want to get out there and start, looking out for them and being the extra pair of eyes and having their 6. And it's just it's disturbing. I've been doing this for almost 9 years, and it's very unsettling.
And I know as a deputy you've probably seen things like this, but have you seen anything like this here before?
I know that there were cases in Sheffield here a few years ago that was a bit crazy involving law enforcement, and I've seen instances in my own experience, not really ambushing the police, but people who hate us, and you deal with those people every single day on.
All right, our apologies about that, folks. Looks like where we were bringing the feed in, the source of that actually switched over as well. We promised more information out of Ohio. Of course, we brought that to you. If we get anything more that we're able to share, we'll bring it to you here on Live Impact News. We've got the Senate Foreign Affairs Subcommittee, actually, that we're seeing right now, discussing Middle East diplomacy. So this is something that we can listen into. So specifically, this is a hearing titled U.S. Diplomatic Strategies for a Dynamic Middle East. Let's listen.
Small presence in Syria. Those support partners like the Kurds, obviously help continue the counter-ISIS mission. If we were to precipitously remove ourselves from all those areas, it would raise a lot of questions in the minds of various partners, and the Chinese would certainly be looking for opportunities to show, maybe not initially militarily, but economically or with cultural or other kinds of programming, that they are an alternative to us. That's something that is very dangerous for our interests.
Well, thank you. I recommend the report to each of you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member.
Thank you. Senator Rosen, then Senator Daines.
Well, thank you. I want to think a little bit about the future. We know what's going on now. We know what we need to do, but I believe we have a big future with the Abraham Accords. And as one of the founders and co-chairs of the Bipartisan Senate Abraham Accords Caucus, I firmly believe that the Abraham Accords is a vehicle for regional integration and transformation. Potential Abraham Accords countries, like we've talked about, Saudi Arabia, have made clear that future expansion of the Accords hinges in part on a durable day-after plan. It's for Gaza. It ends in a two-state solution. Ambassador Shapiro, could you just expand on your testimony to discuss the value of increasing the number of Abraham Accords countries, whether they're in the region or outside the region? What countries do you think we could bring next into the fold? And the impact of the day after in Gaza and the West Bank by increasing regional integration and enhancing Israeli security?
Thank you, Senator. The Abraham Accords, I want to repeat, were one of the great achievements of the first Trump administration and really of Middle East history. They fortunately did not recede, but also sort of stalled during the war. Negotiations continued all through the war with the Saudis on a normalization agreement, and I believe they continue to this day in the second Trump administration. I don't think the Saudis are likely to come to that agreement until the war in Gaza is over, and they have said, the Crown Prince and other Saudi officials repeatedly, they would like to know that there is a pathway to a future Palestinian state. That can be defined lots of ways, but that should be part of this. But I do think their indications that as long as their public and other Arab publics are seeing the scenes of combat and hunger and deprivation out of Gaza, even though they put as much of the blame on Hamas as anybody does, it doesn't create the political context for them to move forward. But we shouldn't just focus on the Saudis. I mentioned the Negev Forum, which has sort of gotten lost in the story.
Negev Forum is amazing.
I used to chair I used to be the U.S. chair of the steering committee of the Negev Forum, which is the U.S., Israel, UAE, Morocco, Bahrain, and Egypt. And so as soon as possible, coming out of the war, we need to reconvene that group and show that this is a multilateral organization that can drive the benefits of regional integration and normalization to their citizens with the working groups on water, on health, on education, on tourism, and the like. But it needs to be expanded. Jordan, we were right on the verge of bringing them in before October 7th. They should be brought in. There should be a role for the Palestinians, not maybe as a full member, but the Palestinian Authority should be present. But I wouldn't stop there. Mauritania, Indonesia, some other smaller Arab League members in Africa have expressed interest previously in joining the Negev Forum and building out that sense of a community of U.S. partners, Israeli and Arab, all working together on those regional problems, but also in the context of a day-after plan, some of those countries coming to Gaza to fund reconstruction, others coming as the troops of an Arab-led or U.S.-partnered security force to provide the security in that interim phase. That's a real opportunity.
Yeah, as been to the Abraham Accords countries multiple times and multiple trips to the region, everyone discussed the possibilities and the all the things that we could do based on the Negev Forum in so many of those areas, water, energy, transportation, cybersecurity, education, and, well, even tourism, right? And so I really look forward to that. I have just a minute left. I'm going to just ask you, Ambassador Shapiro, about the U.S.-Israel Memo of Understanding. You highlighted in your testimony the current 10-year MOU between the U.S. and Israel, key part of our bilateral relationship. The current MOU underscores our long-term security commitment to Israel, facilitates robust military-to-military cooperation, and provides Israel with the platforms and systems it needs to maintain its qualitative military edge. The MOU expires and re-upping it or modifying it, whatever we need to renegotiate that, it will advance our mutual security interests.
Sure. Thank you, Senator. It obviously remains a U.S. interest that Israel be able to defend itself. We've seen the kinds of threats they've faced from multiple.
All right, everyone, we've got some breaking news. Once again, on the Epstein files front, NBC News is reporting that the House Oversight Committee has officially subpoenaed Ghislaine Maxwell, who is actually serving time and is convicted as essentially serving as an accomplice to sex offender Jeffrey Epstein for helping him essentially groom and procure young victims to abuse. So they've officially subpoenaed her. There's a deposition that is set to occur at a federal correctional institution in Tallahassee on August 11th. And we had heard that this was a possibility, that this could happen, but seemingly this is moving quickly, and the House Oversight Committee once again has officially gotten the wheels turning on getting the subpoena done. This is what the subpoena read in part. Quote, the facts and circumstances surrounding both your and Mr. Epstein's cases have received immense public interest and scrutiny. While the Justice Department undertakes efforts to uncover and publicly disclose additional information related to your and Mr. Epstein's cases, it is imperative that Congress conduct oversight of the federal government's enforcement of sex trafficking laws generally and specifically its handling of the investigation and prosecution of you and Mr. Epstein. So there, once again, NBC News with this breaking news report. The House Oversight officially subpoenaing Ghislaine Maxwell, a Jeffrey Epstein accomplice, for a deposition that is set to happen next month, about mid-next month. We've been talking about how there's been a fast and furious push among multiple folks within the nation, but within the president's own party, to try to see more about this case of high interest. And several days back, as we told you, the president essentially put out on social media that he was directing the Attorney General Pam Bondi to make requests to the court to see if grand jury testimony and any sort of documents could be released. And actually, we just told you in breaking updates earlier this hour, out of Florida at least, where the Florida request was in place, a judge had actually denied that request, writing that the court's hands are tied, and essentially rules about grand jury secrecy are ultimate, in the sense that while there's probably reasonable belief that the reasons for grand jury secrecy have expired, they basically said that there are no exceptions. That's not to say that there couldn't be a release out of New York, because there is actually a separate pending request to the Southern District of New York. And that's where Epstein was ultimately indicted. All right, folks, lots of breaking news. We wanted to let you know, as we're kind of turning back now to our 3-box here, we're following multiple different headlines. We've got the 4 o'clock news coming up. Don't forget, we've got Panthers training camp. We talked about that. We've got some reports coming up. We've got that breaking news about, the potential of former Governor Cooper entering the Senate race. Multiple reports here indicating that he could make that announcement as soon as Monday. This would be for Senator Tom Tillis's seat. So Tillis, the incumbent here, indicating in recent weeks that he plans to not run for re-election. Cooper's name has kind of been thrown out there as a potential. It's possible now, according to multiple reporting, that this is coming to fruition. Democrats certainly would probably like to see this, just giving his name recognition and the fact that he has been able to work across both sides of the aisle. Laura Trump on the Republican side, her name has been floated quite loudly as a possibility. She is a North Carolina native, obviously has the Trump name recognition. So this could be quite the high-profile Senate race to come. And we know that usually comes with a lot of money being spent, a lot of advertisements, and a lot of chatter. So we'll be following those developments for you coming up on WCNC Plus at 4 o'clock. We've got a lot going on. I don't know, James, I know we've got I feel like the only place we don't have anything going on, knock on wood.
Are you about to jinx this?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was going to say weather, heat related.
Oh, yeah.
But, I guess I shouldn't have said that.
It was actually kind of nice when
It was delightful.
Vanessa leaned right into her camera for that.
Delightful.
Yeah.
I told you I do my walks before I come into work, and I have been walking through the heat alert, you know, taking all of our weather impact teams' advice into account, seeking shade, hydration, frequent breaks. I still want to get my outside time in, but today was so fantastic.
It was nice out, and we know it's going to get hot again. You'll hear on the news in 4 in just a few minutes when the weather alert days are going to be back on that 7-day forecast. Speaking of being back, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich is back.
Yay!
So he'll be coming your way in just a few minutes on the news.
The gang's all together again.
And again at 6:30 right here on WCNC Plus. So leave us on. Don't go far. We'll be here throughout the night with you, and Vanessa and I will be back as well this evening.
7 o'clock, we're back for Live Impact News, but 4, 5, and 6 News, we're getting to that in just a couple of minutes. James, how are we feeling about time? Are we ready to turn things over? I know we're like kind of looking at the clock here. We still got some feeds. I know that we've got the Senate subcommittee.
Yeah, we'll leave it on our 3 box maybe.
Yeah, let's get back to our 3 box.